Chapter 5806. I will. Lin nodded and said solemnly. He then took out the jade bottle containing the spirit tempering pills and said, Here are 16 spirit tempering pills. You and Sydney will each have half. It can be used to temper one's spirit. Spirit tempering pill? You actually concocted the spirit tempering pill? Tian Chan raised her head and looked at Lin Yi in surprise. It was evident that she had heard of what the spirit tempering pill was. Lin Yi immediately blushed. Even Tian Chan knew about the spirit tempering pill, but he had never heard of it. He was really too ignorant. In fact, Tian Chan had only read about it in the Alchemy Hall's records. This was the importance of inheritance. If Lin Yi could stay by Zhang Liju's side, his knowledge wouldn't be as limited as it was now. Of course, his achievements wouldn't be as high as they were now. There are 2 more mountain-gazing pills. Give one to Tian Bro. Although he won't be able to use it now, he will be able to use it in the future. As for the other one, put it in the shop and sell it as the treasure of the shop. Lin Yi didn't explain about the spirit tempering pill. He just gave the 2 mountain-gazing pills to Tian Chan. The will of heaven practiced the creation arts that Lin Yi had helped him modify. He should be able to improve very quickly in the future. With 1 mountain-gazing pill, he might be able to enter the opening mountain phase very soon. As for the other one, it could make Tiandan Pavilion's reputation skyrocket again. Although it wouldn't be able to make up for the loss of the past 2 years, it could at least restore some of the popularity. Tian Chan didn't ask much about the pills. She put them away and hugged Lin Yi and said, The other things aren't important. It's good that you are safe. Remember to come back soon. I will. Lin Yi smiled and reached out to hug Tian Chan's soft body. He then saw Xue Li poking her head out of the door to look at them. He waved at Xue Li, asking her to come over. She was a bit shy at first, but she quickly came over. Evidently, she knew that he was going to the extreme North Island soon, and she wouldn't be able to see him for a while. She didn't want to miss any chance. Tian Chan, on the other hand, was generous. She pulled Xue Li into his arms, giving him the rare feeling of hugging someone left and right. Kai Zhongyang's men were still waiting downstairs, and Lin Yi didn't waste any more time. After a simple goodbye, he grabbed his luggage and went downstairs. As soon as he went out, he saw Wei Xinjin rushing over. He waved his hand and said, Boss, the fleet is here. We can go over. I'm going over. Let's go together. Lin Yi nodded to Wei Xinjin and followed the people sent by Kai Zhongyang to the dock. It didn't take long for them to see the outline of a huge treasure ship docked at the Middle Island's dock. There were many people loading and unloading goods. One side was unloading goods, and the other side was loading goods. Although it was busy, it was carried out in an orderly manner. Lin Yi looked at it. There were a total of 5 ships docked. In addition to the 4 large treasure ships, there was also a very familiar ancient warship. After sweeping it with his divine sense, he saw an old acquaintance, Okuda Ba, looking at the busy crowd on the dock. Ho Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang were beside Okuda Ba, chatting and laughing with him. Perhaps it was because of the relationship between Okuda Ba and Lin Yi. They seemed to have a good relationship. When Lin Yi's divine sense swept over, the 3 people seemed to have noticed his arrival. They all moved to the entrance of the ancient warship and waited for him. Obviously, Lin Yi was very important to them. After knowing that they were waiting for him, Lin Yi also sped up. Soon he saw them. He immediately smiled and cupped his fists, saying, Captain Okuda, long time no see. We finally meet again. Brother Lin, you're treating me like an outsider. What captain? You're my honorary vice-captain here. Okuda Ba laughed and walked forward quickly. He directly gave Lin Yi a firm hug, fully showing the forthright nature of a man at sea. Lin Yi smiled and said, It's my fault. Brother Okuda, please forgive me. Why are you sending us to the northernmost island this time? Brother Ho and Brother Kai are not good friends. You have been hiding it from me. Kai Zhongyang laughed and said, I want to give you a surprise, Lin brothers. Captain Okuda has been to Nakajima several times. He has been asking about you. I think you will be very happy to see him, right? Lin-Yi now knew that Okuda-ba had come to see him several times in the past 2 years. This was not easy. Previously, Okuda-ba was not willing to go to Nakajima. It was enough to show his hospitality to visit him several times in the past 2 years. I am indeed very happy. Also, thank you, Brother Okuda, for your concern. Lin-Yi remembered this favor in his heart. When there is a chance, he will definitely return it. All right, let's go up and talk. Okuda-ba, don't entertain guests here. Okuda-ba was in a good mood. He pulled Lin-Yi's hand and called everyone to board the ship. The ships on the side were busy loading and unloading cargo. Only Okuda-ba's ancient warship didn't load or unload anything. It was just replenishing some of the materials needed at sea. Lin-Yi's heart slightly moved. He asked with a smile, Brother Okuda, could it be that you have already built a fleet? These 4 enormous ships are all under your command? When Okuda-ba heard Lin-Yi's question, a proud expression appeared on his face. He immediately waved his hand and said, No, among these 4 giant ships, only 2 are mine. The other 2 are my companions. They asked me to escort them along the way. Although my dream is to build an invincible fleet, these 2 treasured ships are far from being a fleet. It's just a small fleet. Brother Okuda is too modest. How long has it been? You already have 2 giant ships. In a few years, you will definitely be able to build an invincible fleet. Kai Zhongyang complimented from the side. However, what he said was the truth. To be able to add 2 giant ships in 2 years without relying on the Okuda clan behind him, Okuda-ba's ability was definitely very powerful. However, after Okuda-ba and Okuda-ba reunited 2 years ago, no one knew whether Okuda-ba helped him in the dark. But thinking about it, it was obvious that he had contributed. Thank you for your auspicious words. Okuda-ba couldn't conceal the happiness on his face. Obviously, Kai Zhongyang had hit the nail on the head. Lin-Yi also praised him. Indeed, there were more giant ships on the Heaven Stage Island than ancient warships. However, they weren't cabbages that could be casually found. It was already not easy for Okuda-ba to add 2 giant ships in 2 years. To be continued. Chapter 5807. This time, the precious items of Middle Island's various families have been brought to the warship, and the ordinary ones have been placed on my 2 treasure ships. Of course, there are also many of my own goods. It's very tiring to maintain these 3 ships. If I don't transport my own goods, I won't even have enough food for my subordinates. Okuda-ba said with a smile, but he didn't look tired at all. Instead, he looked very happy. Lin-Yi understood as well. Okuda Dam's ancient warships usually didn't carry cargo and were used as a military force. This time, however, there were a lot of guests with high statuses in Nakajima, and so they were allowed to bring their most precious items on the warship. Of course, the safety of the giant treasure ships was very high, but compared to the ancient warship, it was not worth mentioning at all. The people of Middle Island with high status were all important customers of Okuda-ba. As long as there was no special reason, they would definitely choose to take the ancient warship. As soon as they arrived on the deck, Lin-Yi saw a group of people from the Hong Chamber of Commerce also boarding the ship. Although he wasn't familiar with the people from the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he was still the honorary vice president, after all. He had to go and greet them. Brother Okuda, I'll go and greet the people from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. You guys go in first, I'll be there in a while. Lin-Yi greeted Okuda-ba and the others, then walked to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Originally, Lin-Yi wasn't interested in this kind of thing, but Hong Zhong was his best friend. For his sake, Lin-Yi should go and greet him, especially since Lin-Yi wanted to know how Hong Zhong was doing recently. This is Vice President Wei of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, right? I'm Lin-Yi, we should have met before. Lin-Yi smiled and greeted him with cupped fists. This time, there weren't many acquaintances in the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but Lin Yi had indeed met Vice President Wei 2 years ago. However, they didn't have much interaction, and he didn't even know his name. There was no friendship between them at all. If it weren't for such a familiar person, Lin Yi might not have come. Vice Chairman Wei glanced at Lin Yi indifferently. He didn't even look at him as he cupped his fists and said indifferently, "I'm Wei Jiating. What's the matter?" Lin Yi was slightly startled. Could it be that this Wei Jiating didn't know him? Logically speaking, it was impossible. Even if Lin Yi had not appeared for 2 years on Middle Island, there were probably not many people who did not know of Lin Yi's name, not to mention that he was the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Taking a step back, even if Wei Jiating didn't know who Lin Yi was, as the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce, how could he put on such an expression on the ancient battleship of Okuda Dam? Didn't they know that those who were able to board this ancient battleship wouldn't have simple identities? Did the Hong Chamber of Commerce still want to do business? Vice President Wei, could it be that you don't recognize me? The smile on Lin Yi's face also disappeared. He wasn't used to sticking his warm face to someone else's cold, but if it weren't for Hong Zhong's sake, he would have left in a huff. "I know you are the honorary vice president, Lin Yi. If there's anything, just say it." Wei Jiating was still expressionless as he spoke. What surprised Lin Yi was that Wei Jiating clearly knew him, yet he still acted like this. It seemed that something had happened in the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Could it be that something had happened to Hong Zhong? Lin Yi was secretly shocked. He knew that even if he continued to ask Wei Jiating, there wouldn't be any results. Hence, he simply nodded and glanced at Wei Jiating indifferently. He didn't even bother to say a word and directly turned to leave. Seeing Lin Yi's expression, Wei Jiating's eyes flashed with some surprise. It seemed that he didn't expect Lin Yi to leave without saying a word. Previously, when he saw him greeting him with a warm smile, Wei Jiating thought that he was a person who could be easily bullied. It seemed that was not the case. However, Wei Jiating didn't care. It was just an honorary vice president. He might have some weight in the outside world, but in front of the vice president of the headquarters in Middle Island, he was nothing. Lin Yi walked towards Okuda Ba and the others with a gloomy expression. Lin Yi didn't care about people like Wei Jiating. He was worried about Hong Zhong now. If nothing happened with Hong Zhong's status in the Hong Chamber of Commerce, probably no one would be disrespectful to him, the honorary vice president. Okuda Ba and the others didn't leave but waited for Lin Yi. They were all very surprised to see this scene. In Middle Island, other than the medicine sect, there was actually someone who wouldn't give Lin Yi face. Moreover, it was someone from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. It was really unexpected. Ho Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang were still fine, but Okuda Ba was considering if he should directly chase the people from the Hong Chamber of Commerce off the ancient battleship. However, he was also a businessman now. Before Lin Yi said anything, it was best to wait and see. Of course, he had to show his attitude. "Brother Lin, what's going on with Wei Jiating?" Okuda Ba frowned and asked Lin Yi, who was walking over. As long as Lin Yi said it, he would definitely chase Wei Jiating and the others away. Although he didn't say it explicitly, he believed that Lin Yi understood what he meant. Lin Yi waved his hand and said with a faint smile, "It's nothing. He's just an irrelevant person. We don't need to care about him." That's right. There's no need to care about ordinary people. Let's go and have a drink together." Okuda Ba smiled. Since Lin Yi said this, it saved him from being in a difficult position. Naturally, his mood was much better. However, he remembered Wei Jiating. As long as he had a proper reason, Okuda Ba wouldn't be polite to him. As they were talking, a flying spirit beast directly flew over from the sky above Middle Island and quickly landed on the deck of the ancient battleship. If it was in the past, the people on the ancient battleship would have already surrounded the person. However, Okuda Ba was a businessman now, so of course he wouldn't do such a thing. On Middle Island, flying spirit beasts were generally prohibited. Except for a small number of people at the top who had this privilege, ordinary people would be courting death if they dared to fly. now that someone directly flew from the inland direction of Middle Island to Okuda Ba's ancient battleship. It was obvious that the person's identity was noble. Okuda Ba only took a glance at the person on the flying spirit beast and didn't have any intention of greeting him. The acting island master of Middle Island was a second brother. Except for people like Lin Yi, who he thought highly of, there weren't many people who were worthy of him greeting personally. Even if it was to do business, he wouldn't deliberately cater to others. Chapter 5808. The other person was someone Lin Yi knew, Zhang Dongjue of House Zhang. As the vice head of the pill hall, he was accompanying this classical beauty. One could see how noble this girl's identity was. Other than the two of them, there was a young man on the flying spirit beast. His looks were passable, but he was smiling and talking to the girl attentively. It made people have a bad impression of him. Brother Ho, is this someone from the pill hall? Lin Yi put aside his worry for Hong Zhong and asked curiously. It wasn't the first time he came to the Middle Island, but he had never heard of someone like this in the pill hall. She could actually ride a flying spirit beast and have Zhang Dongjue by her side. Ho Guanqi introduced softly. That's right, she's called Li Zhaoyi, the head refiner of the pill hall. The head isn't here, so her skills are the strongest, although I don't know who her master is. She is indeed very talented. Brother Lin, your skills are quite strong as well, but to put it bluntly, you might not be able to compare to Master Li. Lin Yi smiled faintly and didn't mind. If he lost the Shinnon cauldron, his skills wouldn't be comparable to Li Zhaoyi's. Anyone who could make elixirs would be better than him. There really wasn't much to say in this regard. But this girl was the head refiner of the Hall of Elixirs. Lin Yi couldn't help but be surprised when he heard that. Although he didn't count Zhang Liju as his master, there were still quite a number of refiners in the Hall of Elixirs. Being able to get the title of head refiner meant that this girl with a weird name had real skills. Looking at her age, she should be even younger than Lin Yi. There really were geniuses everywhere. Alchemist Li's identity is very mysterious. A few years ago, he suddenly appeared in the Dan Hall and became the chief alchemist of our Dan Hall in one fell swoop. After that, he went into closed-door cultivation to refine pills for a long period of time. Normally, he would not even be able to see his figure, and I wonder what level his pill refining ability has reached. Ho Guanqi obviously admired this little beauty, Li Zhaoyi. When he talked about her, his face was full of admiration. Kai Zhongyang also echoed, "Yes, I have also heard of Li Zhaoyi's name." This time she was able to participate in the auction of the extreme North Island. She must have taken a fancy to something. Among the first auction items that were revealed, there were indeed several top-grade alchemy materials. Lin Yi shrugged his shoulders. He did not care much about alchemy, as long as they did not compete with him for the Gathering God branch and Soulwood. As for Li Zhaoyi's strong alchemy ability, he did not care. In the cultivation world, strength was respected, regardless of gender. The same was true for alchemy. For example, Han Jingjing's talent was definitely not worse than Li Zhaoyi's. Let's go have a chat and drink. It's better than standing here in the wind." Okuda Ba greeted everyone with a smile. He knew that Lin Yi did not have a good impression of Zhang Dongjue, and they were even enemies with deep hatred, so he was too lazy to care about Li Zhaoyi and her group. Since they did not have a good relationship, he would just mind his own business. Although as the captain of the ancient warship, Okuda Ba should show a neutral and peaceful attitude to maintain a transcendent force field. Lin Yi was his honorary vice-captain. He was definitely one of them. Of course, others could do whatever they wanted. Although Ho Guanqi was also a member of the Pill Hall, he had always been at odds with Zhang Dongjue. Normally, when he saw Li Zhaoyi coming out of seclusion, he would go over to greet her. However, with Zhang Dongjue there, Ho Guanqi pretended not to see it. Okuda Ba brought Lin Yi, Ho Guanqi, Kai Zhongyang, and Wei Xinjin to his four-person banquet hall. Someone had already prepared exquisite food, and the five of them sat down casually to eat. When Lin Yi saw the food, he thought of Languza. If this guy was here, he would probably sweep away everything again. He did not know if he was nearby, or if he had already entered the sea near Middle Island and waited for the ship here to set off before catching up. By the way, Brother Kai, Brother Ho, this time there seems to be a lot of big shots at the auction on extreme North Island. I have been there once before, but I did not see many big shots there. Lin Yi took a sip of the wine brewed with spirit fruit and asked Kai Zhongyang and Ho Guanqi casually. Kai Zhongyang smiled and said, "Indeed, the scale of this time is relatively large." Well, it should be said that it is the largest auction on extreme North Island in the past 10 years. The reason is that many precious treasures came out of Dongzhou, such as the Spirit Gathering Branch and the Soul Wood. Speaking of which, these two things are not the most precious treasures this time. Ho Guanqi also nodded with a smile and said, "Because there's so many good things, this time the auction on extreme North Island is quite sensational. Every family has also taken out their more precious collections to participate in the auction. So the level of this auction has increased by several levels. For example, in the past, the elixirs of the foundation establishment stage could be the main auction item. But this year, it is estimated that ordinary auction items can't even be auctioned and can only be traded in the periphery." Lin Yi deeply believed that the last time he went with Hong Zhong, because they were plotted against by the opponents of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, causing them to lose the auction items they prepared on the way. It was he who continuously refined more than 100 top-grade elixirs of the foundation establishment stage that let Hong Zhong escape the disaster. At that time, the elixirs were all for the foundation establishment stage, belonging to the 4th level of the yellow level, but it was already very rare to be auctioned. But this time, it is estimated that only the elixirs of the 6th level of the yellow level and above are qualified to enter the auction. Speaking of elixirs, Lin Yi remembered about the restrictions of the spirit-quenching pill. So he said to Ho Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang, "Brother Ho, Brother Kai, this time I learned a method of using divine sense to condense elixir fire in the small ancient Jianghu. The alchemists there all use the divine sense elixir fire to refine elixirs. I don't know if you have heard of it? There is such an elixir fire? I have never heard of it," Ho Guanqi said in surprise. Although he hadn't started refining the spirit-quenching pill yet, he had studied it a few times and felt that something wasn't right. Now that he heard Lin Yi talk about the divine sense elixir fire, he finally understood. Kai Zhongyang may be the vice president of the 5 Elements Commerce, but he was also Zhang Liju's disciple in name. He asked with interest, "This type of divine sense elixir fire sounds very interesting. If Brother Lin doesn't mind, why don't you show it to us?" "Of course not." Lin Yi smiled and reached out his left hand, using his divine sense to condense an elixir fire. Although Okuda Ba and Wei Xinjin didn't know much about elixir refining, they were very curious when they saw the divine sense elixir fire. Chapter 5809. Lin Yi's heart moved slightly. He seemed to have grasped something, but before he could think about it, Ho Guanqi opened his mouth and asked, "Brother Lin, this method of condensing the pill flame, can you teach it to us?" Normally, this kind of thing was not something an ordinary person could casually mention. Any method of condensing a pill flame, if one wanted to obtain it, there was a price to pay. However, Ho Guanqi's relationship with Lin Yi was not ordinary. Even the spiritual sense grass root could be casually given to him. So a trivial method of condensing a pill flame, he estimated that he would not keep it to himself. Moreover, Ho Guanqi had already felt that the pill flame was the key to refining the soul-tempering pill. If he could not master the pill flame, it was estimated that the spiritual sense grass root in his hands could only be used directly. Lin Yi said that he wanted to teach them, and Ho Guanqi could see this point clearly. So without saying anything, he taught them the method of condensing the pill flame. As for Ao, Tianba, and Wei Xinjin, if they wanted to learn it, there was no problem. He was afraid that they would not be interested. After teaching, Lin Yi slowly drank the spirit fruit wine alone, letting the 4 of them ponder the method of condensing the pill flame. Unfortunately, after half an hour, there was no progress or gain. The first to give up was Wei Xinjin. then Ao, Tianba. Kai Zhongyang persisted for a while, and finally Hou Guanqi, who was unwilling to give up. Brother Lin, the strength of my spiritual sense is too weak. It seems that there is no way to successfully condense this pill flame. Hou Guanqi shook his head, helplessly. He clearly knew that without the pill flame, he could not refine the soul-tempering pill. Unfortunately, his spiritual sense really could not condense the pill flame, unless he used a lot of soul-tempering pills to temper the strength of his spiritual sense. However, if one's divine sense wasn't strong enough, they wouldn't be able to condense a pill fire to refine the soul-tempering pill. This was simply an unsolvable cycle. Lin Yi could sense that the strength of divine sense of Hou Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang was only about the same as the cultivators who had just built their foundation in the remote ancient Jianghu. It was indeed too difficult for them to condense the divine sense elixir fire. Even if they succeeded, it would not be of much use, because the strength of their divine sense was not enough to support the concoction of a furnace of elixirs. Senior brother, this kind of spiritual sense alchemic fire is a relatively useless thing for us. Don't worry too much about it. Anyway, it's not of much use. Kai Zhongyang said indifferently. He did not know that Hou Guanqi wanted to use the spiritual sense alchemic fire to refine the soul-tempering pill. For him, the spiritual sense alchemic fire really did not have much meaning. Hou Guanqi shook his head and did not say anything. The matter of the spiritual sense, grassroots, was related to Lin Yi. Unless he said it himself, Hou Guanqi would not leak any information about it. As for the matter of the soul-tempering pill, naturally the fewer people who knew about it, the better. Regarding this situation, Lin Yi also had no way to deal with it. Even if he refined the soul-tempering pill, it was impossible to provide it to Hou Guanqi without limit. There were too many people close to him. Even if he had more spiritual sense grassroots, it would not be enough. The cultivators of the heaven stage island looked down on the cultivation of spiritual sense too much. This situation was something that Lin Yi could not change. Generally, the cultivators here would only start to pay attention to the cultivation of spiritual sense after reaching the giant realm. Only those like the West Mountain Old Ancestor, who mainly used spiritual sense attack as their main means, would continue to cultivate spiritual sense cultivation method. In contrast, the cultivation method of the ancient, small Jianghu was better. If it was not for the restrictions of the ancient, small Jianghu, their strength might have already surpassed the heaven stage island. Since no one could successfully refine the spiritual sense, alchemic fire, Lin Yi no longer mentioned this matter. Okuda Ba also consciously changed the topic and talked about many interesting things he saw at sea. The atmosphere slowly became lively. For Okuda Ba, whether Lin Yi was a profound level 1 alchemist or not was not important. What he valued was Lin Yi's strength at sea and future development potential. If possible, Okuda Ba did not mind letting Lin Yi become a real vice captain or even a real captain of a ship. After chatting for a while, Lin Yi and the others got up to leave and prepared to return to their rooms to settle down. Okuda Ba still had things to deal with, so he did not personally send them over. Instead, he arranged for someone to lead the way. With the status of Lin Yi and the others, Okuda Ba naturally arranged the highest level rooms for them. Wei Xinjin's status was slightly lower, but because of Lin Yi's light, he was also arranged to be next to him. When they came to the door, Lin Yi handed a jade bottle to Wei Xinjin and said, "Go back to your room and immediately refine it. The things in your body will disappear and become your true qi. What you do in the future is up to you." Wei Xinjin was slightly startled and immediately knew what it was. He excitedly took it with both hands and bowed to thank Lin Yi. "Thank you for the medicine, boss. In the future, I, Wei Xinjin, will still follow boss. Even if I have to go through water and tread on fire, I will not hesitate." Lin Yi nodded and said, "All right, you go in first. Come find me later." "Yes, boss." Wei Xinjin respectfully bowed and left. After entering his room, he immediately swallowed the medicine in the jade bottle. Seeing that Wei Xinjin had been loyal for the past 2 years, Lin Yi directly cut off the heart-devouring insect in his body this time, and let him completely refine the heart-devouring insect, increasing part of his cultivation. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, a refreshed Wei Xinjin knocked on the wooden door of Lin Yi's room, and after getting permission, he walked in with a beaming face. "Boss!" Wei Xinjin cupped his fists and bowed. He didn't say any more words of thanks, and just stood respectfully at the side. Lin Yi pointed to a chair and said, "Sit down and talk, no need to be restrained." Speaking of which, Lin Yi and Wei Xinjin didn't have much contact. In the beginning, Wei Xinjin was also forced to rely on Lin Yi, and the two actually didn't talk much, so they weren't familiar. "This time when you go to the extreme North Island, is there anything you want to buy?" Lin Yi casually asked. It was considered as a topic of conversation. Wei Xinjin quickly shook his head and said, "No, the level of this auction is too high. There's basically nothing I can participate in bidding for. Maybe I can find some suitable things in the trading market outside. I will look at it when the time comes." "Oh," Lin Yi said. To be honest, he really didn't know how to chat with people. After thinking about it, he said, "If you don't have enough spirit jades, just tell me. I still have a lot here." "Thank you, boss. I have enough on me. If not, I will not be polite," Wei Xinjin said flatteringly. It seemed like he didn't expect Lin Yi to say these words to him. Chapter 58:10. Lin Yi burst into laughter. Wei Xinjin had finally walked out of the shadow of the past. That was good. Which family is she from? It's not enough to be her friend. It's rare to have such an opportunity. You must pursue her. Lin Yi reached out and patted Wei Xinjin's shoulder, showing his full support. She's the daughter of the vice president of the Universal Chamber of Commerce. Her name is Shan Yuhua. She's a real lady from a respectable family. She's gentle and beautiful. If I can get to know her, I'll be quite satisfied. Wei Xinjin had a gentle smile on his face. It seemed that he really fell in love. The question was, why did he say that he would be quite satisfied if he could get to know her? It turned out that this guy was totally in love with her. They didn't even know each other. Lin Yi felt that this guy still had a long way to go. "Well, come on. Do you want me to give you some advice?" Lin Yi just said it casually. He didn't expect that Wei Xinjin seemed to have been waiting for his words. After hearing it, he immediately nodded. "Boss, it's great that you're willing to give me advice. With your help, I think it'll be very smooth," Wei Xinjin said with a little excitement, which made Lin Yi speechless. What's going on? Did Wei Xinjin plan to ask him for advice a long time ago? Thinking about it, it was really possible. In the past 2 years, Wei Xinjin had been helping in the Tiandan Pavilion. Of course, he knew that the two stunning beauties, Tian Chan and Sydney, were both in love with Lin Yi. Later, Han Jingjing, Shangguan Laner, and it was said that there was also the little princess of West Island, Ning Xuefei. Boss Lin Yi was absolutely powerful in this aspect. He was Wei Xinjin's goal and idol. Now that he had a chance to ask for advice, of course, he wouldn't miss it. Lin Yi smiled bitterly and shook his head. It seemed that he couldn't casually talk nonsense in the future. Wasn't this just looking for trouble for himself? If he had the time, it would be better to refine 2 more furnaces of pills. However, since he had already said it, Lin Yi could only be responsible to the end. After thinking for a while, he said, "How about this? You don't know her yet, so the most important thing is to let her get to know you and have a good impression of you. After that, we can proceed to the next step of the plan." If you ask what's the next step, he was still thinking about it. Wei Xinjin nodded and said, "Boss, you're right. We have to let her know me first. I know that the Universal Chamber of Commerce is also writing an ancient warship this time. Why don't we find her first?" Lin Yi was also speechless. It was the middle of the night. Where could he find her location? If he had known earlier, he could have just asked Okuda Dam. The ancient warship had restrictions that blocked divine sense everywhere. So, although Lin Yi's divine sense was strong, it wasn't easy to find someone. In addition, he didn't know who Shan Yuhua was, so he couldn't find her even if he wanted to. "Boss, why don't we go to the restaurant on the ship? Maybe we'll be able to see her?" Wei Shenjin actively put forward his own suggestion. He wanted to say that he would wait until tomorrow to find her, but he thought that it was his idea. Since Wei Shenjin wanted to take a look, then he would go and take a look. The two left the room and went to the small restaurant in the ancient warship's VIP cabin. Although it was expensive, there were quite a lot of people there. Along the way, they saw several people walking there. This was completely different from what Linny thought. Is it because they just boarded the ship so they can't sleep? Or is it because the food here is so delicious that they can't wait to come again tomorrow? After entering the restaurant, Yi realized that he had underestimated the number of nobles in Middle Island. The ancient warship's VIP cabin wasn't for the rich. In other words, in this small restaurant for VIPs, all the people in Middle Island were famous people. Wei Shenjin took a deep breath. Seeing that the small restaurant was almost full, he couldn't help but feel a little scared. As a core disciple of the Snow Sword School, Wei Shenjin could barely be counted as one of the nobles of the Middle Island. However, compared to the people here, he was clearly at the lowest level. He could only be considered as barely qualified to enter this circle. "Boss, why don't we go back? There are so many people." Wei Shenjin said hesitantly. In front of so many people, it was really embarrassing for him to pursue Shan Yuhua. Yi smiled faintly and said, "Is the girl you like here?" "Yes," Wei Shenjin replied in a low voice with some embarrassment. Then he glanced in a direction without anyone noticing. He didn't turn his head to look. Instead, he used his divine sense to follow Wei Shenjin's gaze. If there was someone with the same divine sense as him, it would be very impolite and might even cause a conflict. However, Yi already knew that Heaven Stage Island was basically a divine sense desert. It was impossible to detect his divine sense without reaching the Magnate Realm. Even in the first two realms of the Magnate Realm, there wouldn't be anyone with a stronger divine sense than him, unless it was someone like Shishan Old Master who relied on his divine sense. Because of this, Yi's divine sense easily found the table of the Universal Chamber of Commerce. Although he didn't know the people of the Universal Chamber of Commerce, he still knew the logo of their Chamber of Commerce. There were a total of 5 people at the table. 2 of them were from the Universal Chamber of Commerce, and the other 3 were familiar with them. At this time, they were chatting happily. The 2 people from the Universal Chamber of Commerce were a man and a woman. The man was a middle-aged man dressed in brocade clothes. The woman was about 20 years old and wore a light yellow skirt. She should be the Shan Yuhua that Wei Shenjin liked. Her appearance and temperament were really good. Although she wasn't at the level of Tian Chan and Sydney, she was only slightly inferior. "You have a good eye. Okay, let's find a place to sit down first. I'll see if there is a chance for you to get to know each other later." He still didn't look over there. He just looked around casually as if he was looking for an empty seat. Then he whispered to Wei Shenjin. Wei Shenjin looked a little embarrassed. Although he was not very embarrassed, he had a little confidence in Yi, the boss, to make the decision. "Over there. There are still empty seats at the table over there." Yi pointed casually. There were indeed 2 empty seats between the 2 tables of Shan Yuhua and Yi. Here, everyone's status was similar. It was normal to share a table. Eating was not the main point. Making friends was the most important thing. Of course, Wei Shenjin had no objection. The 2 empty seats were facing Shan Yuhua, and they were separated by 2 tables. It was a safe distance, just enough for him to peek at her secretly. It couldn't be better. Chapter 58:11. However, after Yi sat down, he realized that he had seen the person sitting opposite him before. It was the chief alchemist of the Pill Hall, the genius girl Li Zhaoyi. Li Zhaoyi noticed that there were 2 people sitting opposite her. She raised her head and glanced at them, but there was no change in expression on her delicate face. Lin Yi smiled slightly and nodded to her as a kind greeting. However, Li Zhaoyi had no intention of responding. After withdrawing her gaze, she continued to eat the food in front of her indifferently. Although Li Zhaoyi's appearance was more beautiful than Shang Yuhua's, Wei Xinjin, who was in the eye of the beholder, did not pay attention to her at all. He completely ignored her existence and just asked Lin Yi in a low voice, "Boss, what should we do next?" "Next, let's order something to eat first," Lin Yi said somewhat speechlessly. Wei Xinjin's expression and tone could easily make people misunderstand that they were going to do something bad. Fortunately, Li Zhaoyi seemed to be indifferent to everything around her. Otherwise, it would really be quite embarrassing. Wei Xinjin responded with an "oh," and quickly waved to the waiter in the VIP restaurant to come over to order. Lin Yi paid attention to what Li Zhaoyi was eating. They should all be things from the sea. A little meat, a little sea plants, and a drink brewed with spiritual fruit. These things contained rich spiritual energy fluctuations, which were obviously very beneficial to cultivators. It was no wonder that so many people came here to eat even though it was so late. Not only could they communicate with people of similar status, they could also enjoy delicious food, and they could also obtain the same effect of meditating and cultivating. Of course, this kind of place would attract many people. On the way to the extreme North Island, perhaps this was the most popular place. Of course, people like Li Zhaoyi would probably just come to taste something new, and then enter a state of closed-door alchemy. Therefore, this might be the only time they could encounter such a situation here. After ordering something casually, Wei Xinjin waved his hand to dismiss the waiter, and then asked again in a low voice, "Boss, what should we do next?" Lin Yi was really defeated by him. It seemed that the intelligence of a man who fell in love was infinitely close to zero. He was almost losing the ability to think for himself. Wait for the food to come up. "Yes, boss." As soon as Wei Xinjin finished speaking, he noticed a person walking over quickly and standing beside him. Before he could look up to see who it was, he heard the man say coldly, "Who are you two? Go away at once. This is this young master's seat." Lin, he didn't even raise his eyes. He didn't want to pay attention to this guy at all. In his divine sense, he had already discovered that this guy was the young man who came with Li Zhaoyi and Zhang Dongjue. If he had talked nicely with him, Lin Yi might have given up his position. But this condescending tone of command, did he really think he was something? Lin Yi was too lazy to respond, but Wei Xinjin was unhappy. He was about to sneak a peek at Yuhua, but he was interrupted abruptly. He was a little shocked, so it would be strange if he had a good expression. "Your seat? I'm sorry, I didn't see your name anywhere. I only know that this is a public place. Whoever sits down first gets the seat. Could it be that your butt is so big that you can occupy this place from a distance?" Wei Xinjin sneered mercilessly. His identity was indeed nothing here, but it didn't mean that anyone could bully and order him around. What's more, his boss, Lin Yi, was sitting next to him. He couldn't lose his boss's face. The young man said angrily, "Who are you? How dare you speak to this young master like this? Get out of the way, or I, Zhang Tianqing, will let you know what regret is." "Zhang Tianqing? I thought you were a big shot. It turns out that you are the grandson of that old dog, Zheng Dongsheng. As a little dog, your barking skill is quite good." Wei Xinjin sneered. If it were someone else, he might give some face. Zheng Dongsheng's grandson? Then he was really just a grandson. Tiandan Pavilion and the medicine sect had been like fire and water for a long time. It would be strange if they paid attention to this fool. Zhang Tianqing's face suddenly became livid. He hadn't been in Middle Island for a long time, but because of his relationship with Zheng Dongsheng and Zheng Dongjue, he was relatively popular in Middle Island. He had never been bullied like this before. When in Dongzhou, Zhang Tianqing might not be the most talented one, but when he came to Middle Island, he felt quite good about himself. Although Middle Island seemed to be the central area of the Heaven Stage Island, in fact, Dongzhou was the strongest place. From Dongzhou to Middle Island, Zheng Tianqing thought that only a woman like Li Zhaoyi was worthy of him. If Li Zhaoyi hadn't been next to him, Zheng Tianqing would definitely have immediately turned hostile and attacked him. Fortunately, he still had some sense of propriety and didn't dare to be too presumptuous, lest Li Zhaoyi would be unhappy. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Zheng Tianqing said coldly, "I'm with her. We don't like people sharing tables. You two leave here immediately." This time, Wei Shenjin couldn't say anything. It didn't matter if he looked down on Zheng Tianqing, but Li Zhaoyi was the chief alchemist of Alchemy Hall. If he talked nonsense, he would offend Alchemy Hall. Lin Yi glanced at Li Zhaoyi lightly. This girl was sitting alone in the middle of the two seats on the bench. Obviously, she didn't want anyone to sit next to her. If she really wanted Zheng Tianqing to sit down, she should move now to make room. But it seemed that she didn't have this idea. "Alchemist Li, is he with you?" Lin Yi asked casually. He guessed that Li Zhaoyi would probably not admit it. If she admitted that she was with Zheng Tianqing, Lin Yi wouldn't give up the seat to the Zheng family, but would ask her to give it up herself. Sure enough, as Lin Yi expected, Li Zhaoyi looked up and said lightly without any emotion on her face, "No." Zheng Tianqing was suddenly embarrassed, and he was also very angry with Li Zhaoyi in his heart. But he didn't dare to show it. He could only snort angrily at Wei Shenjin. Wei Shenjin laughed and said, "The Zheng family is really shameless. Forget it. I don't want to argue with you. Get out of here. If you're hungry, our boss doesn't mind throwing you a bone." These words were going to confirm Zheng Tianqing's identity as a puppy. How could Zheng Tianqing bear it? After a cold snort, the genuine qi in his body was instantly released, and the momentum of the early yuanying stage suddenly crushed towards Lin Yi and Wei Shenjin. Chapter 58:12. If Zheng Tianqing didn't know what was good for him, Lin Yi didn't mind teaching him a lesson. However, this guy withdrew his true qi as soon as he released it. Perhaps he knew that this was not a place for him to be presumptuous, so he didn't take further action. It seemed that it was just a momentary impulse under anger. In this way, Lin Yi couldn't teach him a lesson. He didn't want to bully the weak. Regarding Zheng Tianqing's gaffe, Li Zhaoyi still didn't have any emotional fluctuations, as if the other party was completely unrelated to her. But when she came, she clearly boarded the ship with Zheng Tianqing on a flying spirit beast. It seemed that this chick not only had a strange name, but also a strange character. Looking at her unapproachable appearance, it was not easy for her to tolerate Lin Yi and Wei Shenjin sitting opposite her. After Zheng Tianqing withdrew his momentum, he didn't say anything more. He glared at Lin Yi and Wei Shenjin, then simply turned around and left. This made Lin Yi look up to him. Normally, in this kind of situation, he should have left a few brainless words. But this guy actually held back all of them. After he left, the food ordered by Wei Shenjin was delivered. Lin Yi was about to eat when he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Just now, Zheng Tianqing's eyes were not only angry and hateful, but also a hint of faint pride. Because it was too vague, Lin Yi himself didn't pay much attention to it. Now that he thought about it, it seemed that something was wrong. Just as he was about to remind Wei Shenjin to see if there was anything wrong, this guy had completely shown it. "Chick, you are so beautiful. Hee, so tender. I really want to F***CK you. Come here." Wei Shenjin's face turned red in an instant. While talking nonsense, he reached out to pull Li Zhaoyi's wrist. Lin Yi's face changed. He didn't expect that Zheng Tianqing's means were so covert that even he was deceived. Moreover, the effect of the medicine was far more overbearing than he had imagined. In such a short time, Wei Shenjin suddenly had an attack without any warning. Li Zhaoyi, who had been expressionless, finally changed her expression. She directly slapped away Wei Shenjin's palm with the tableware in her hand. Her eyes were full of disgust, and she almost called for help. Lin Yi reacted very quickly. Before Wei Shinjin could make another move, he directly reached out and pulled him back to his seat. At the same time, he secretly restrained his ability to move, and his genuine qi flowed into his meridians like lightning. At the same time, Zheng Tianqing, who had just left, quickly came back again with several guards. He pointed at Lin Yi and Wei Shinjin and said, "Catch them. How dare they molest Master Li Zhaoyi, the chief alchemist of Alchemy Hall? They simply don't know how to write the word death." Lin Yi sneered. This guy moved fast. Even a fool would not believe that it was not premeditated. When he finished speaking, Lin Yi's omnipotent genuine qi had already forced the poison in Wei Shinjin's body into his palm. After a slight shake, it condensed into a small black air mass floating in his palm. Zheng Tianqing, right? Good little trick. You can actually poison people by releasing genuine qi. It is invisible, colorless, and tasteless. You can directly poison people by oppressing them with your aura. You do have some skills. Unfortunately, it's useless against me. Lin Yi wrapped the small black air mass with his genuine qi, grabbed it in front of his eyes, and said disdainfully. With the result, it was easy to reverse the process. Before, Lin Yi did not care about Zheng Tianqing, so he could take advantage of the loophole. Now, if he did it again, even if he released all his genuine qi, Lin Yi could make him swallow it back. Zheng Tianqing's face changed slightly. Obviously, he did not expect that not only was Lin Yi not poisoned, but he could also force the poison out of Wei Shinjin so quickly. However, of course, he would not admit what Lin Yi said. He immediately sneered and said, "Nonsense." He turned his head and said to the guards who followed him, "What are you waiting for? These two guys who flirted with Master Li Zhao are here. Hurry up and catch them." Seeing Master Li Zhao's beauty, they dare to do bad things. They are really audacious. The guards looked at each other, but they did not really make a move to catch them. No ordinary person could sit here and eat. Only a fool would rush to catch them. At least they should figure out the matter. Lin Yi ignored Zheng Tianqing and turned to ask Li Zhaoyi, "This matter started because of you. Now tell me, who do you believe?" Li Zhaoyi frowned slightly and looked at the tableware in her hand. She had not finished eating yet, but she had already used the tableware to hit Wei Shinjin's hand. It seemed that she could not continue to use it. Hearing Lin Yi's question, Li Zhaoyi raised her head. Her frowning eyebrows relaxed, and her indifferent expression returned. She threw away the tableware in her hand, stood up, and said, "It has nothing to do with me. You can make trouble yourselves." After saying this, Li Zhaoyi turned around and left, not looking at any of them again. Zheng Tianqing's face darkened, and he said to the guards, "Did you see that? Master Li Zhao is angry. Hurry up and catch these two people." Lin Yi released his genuine qi, and the black gas suddenly dissipated. It was secretly injected into Zheng Tianqing's body. When it came to poisoning, he was really not afraid of anyone. Originally, this thing would take a few breaths to take effect, but Lin Yi accelerated the speed of the drug. So as soon as it entered Zheng Tianqing's body, Zheng Tianqing immediately died. "Oh, you are so beautiful. I like you so much. Come with me." Zheng Tianqing hugged the guard next to him and rubbed his body with all his might. He even made weird noises, which almost made the people eating next to him throw up. The guard who was hugged by Zheng Tianqing was suddenly confused. He subconsciously wanted to break free from his arms, but this bastard was a master at the early stage of the Yuanying realm, so he couldn't break free for a while. He wanted to ask for help from his companions next to him, but those bastards all stepped back and kept a distance from Zheng Tianqing. Then they looked at their brother with sympathy in their eyes. As the saying goes, if you don't go to hell, who will go to hell? Lin Yi said with a sarcastic smile, "See, you didn't control yourself well. Now the poison has taken effect, right? You've put yourself in danger. What a disgrace. Your Zheng family has been disgraced by you." Li Zhaoyi looked back with a little surprise, and a thoughtful look flashed in his eyes. but he didn't mean to stay. He turned back and continued to leave. Wei Shenjin didn't have time to watch Sheng Tianqing make a fool of himself now. He lowered his head and pulled on Lin Yi's sleeve, saying, "Boss, let's go." Chapter 58:13. Originally, he wanted to get to know Shang Yuhua in the best way possible, but now it was all ruined. It was estimated that Shang Yuhua would not only have a bad impression of him, but also despise Wei Shenjin. Zhang Tianqing's ugly behavior was really disgusting. Lin Yi did not want this guy to affect other people's appetite, so he simply knocked him out and asked the guards to take him out. The rescued guard looked at Lin Yi gratefully and almost knelt down to thank him. However, he did not know that Zhang Tianqing would be like this. The mastermind behind this was Lin Yi. After sending Zhang Tianqing away, Lin Yi turned back to Wei Shenjin and said, "What are you worried about? What happened just now was not your fault. You don't need to be responsible for it." Wei Shenjin still lowered his head and did not dare to look at the Universal Chamber of Commerce. It seemed that his confidence had been seriously damaged. Lin Yi suddenly felt that he had let Zhang Tianqing off too easily just now. It seemed that he had to continue to teach him a lesson next time. However, the more important thing now was to let Wei Shenjin regain his confidence. Lin Yi thought that there was no good way. He just saw the three people at Shang Yuhua's table leave, leaving only her and the middle-aged man from the Universal Chamber of Commerce. So he stood up and pulled Wei Shenjin to go there directly. Wei Shenjin was shocked. How could he have the courage to face Shang Yuhua, especially after what had happened just now? When he was pulled by Lin Yi, he could not resist. Even if he could resist, he did not dare to have the thought of resisting. "Hello, I am Lin Yi from the Tiandan Pavilion. This is my friend, Wei Shenjin from the Snow Sword faction. Can we sit here?" Lin Yi walked over with Wei Shenjin and asked politely with his fists cupped. The middle-aged man was slightly surprised. After all, he had seen what had happened just now. However, after Lin Yi introduced himself, he immediately stood up with a smile and cupped his fists. "Oh, Master Lin from the Tiandan Pavilion. I've heard a lot about you. I am Shang Wani, the Vice President of the Universal Chamber of Commerce. This is my daughter, Shang Yuhua." Since Shang Wani had stood up, of course, Shang Yuhua could only stand up and salute Lin Yi. She seemed to have a good attitude. Although Lin Yi had some conflicts with the Universal Chamber of Commerce before, it was between the branch of the Universal Chamber of Commerce in the North Island and had nothing to do with the headquarters of Zhongdao. Of course, Shang Wani would not do anything to Lin Yi. "Master Lin, young hero Wei, please sit down. It's my honor to meet you two." Shang Wani laughed and invited Lin Yi and Shang Wani to sit down. Then he asked the waiter to bring their food over and ordered a few more dishes. However, he did not say a word about why Lin Yi and Shang Wani came here. This was the old fox in the business world. If you pretended to want to know the purpose of others when they came to you, you were not the material to do business. Wei Shenjin lowered his head slightly and looked a little uneasy. Lin Yi could only scold him for being disappointing in his heart. How could a man be shy? Lin Yi had no choice but to say, "Here's the thing. I had some dealings with the Universal Chamber of Commerce before. I also heard the name of Vice President Shang in Zhongdao. I just saw you here, so I took the liberty to come over and say hello." Shang Wani laughed and said, "Master Lin, you are too polite. What kind of reputation can I have? In Zhongdao, Master Lin, you are the man of the moment, especially the Heavenly Pill Pavilion. Let's not talk about their past glory. When Master Lin wasn't around, they went into hibernation for a period of time. But once you returned, the Heavenly Pill Pavilion immediately soared." Lin Yi had a good impression of him, so he smiled and said, "Heavenly Dan Pavilion is just a small elixir pavilion. It can't compare to a big chamber of commerce like the Altong Chamber of Commerce. It's too much to say that it's soaring. It's all because of everyone's care. Vice President Shang is the real elite of Middle Island. Even Miss Shang is so outstanding The All-Tong Chamber of Commerce will definitely become more prosperous in the future. This time, the main purpose of his visit was to matchmake Wei Xinjin and Shang Yuhua. Of course, he had to bring the topic to Shang Yuhua. Lin, he just felt that his change of topic was a little stiff. Was it too obvious? Shang Yuhua curled her lips with some disdain. Although it was only for a moment, Lin caught it. What did this girl mean? Was she looking down on me? On second thought, Lin understood. Shang Yuhua probably thought that Lin wanted to pursue her, so she specially came to talk to him. Who didn't know the two beauties of the Tiandan Pavilion in Zhongdao? They were all Lin Yi's people. Now, he wanted to provoke her, Shang Yuhua. It was reasonable for him to be despised by her. Thinking about this, Lin suddenly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If he really wanted to pursue Shang Yuhua, it was not him, Lin Yi, but Wei Xinjin. When Shang Wani heard Lin Yi's praise, he laughed and said, "Master Lin, you flatter me. You are the real young hero. My daughter is definitely not comparable to you, Master Lin." After complimenting each other for a while, Lin Yi turned to Shang Yuhua and said, "Miss Shang, I heard that you have the water spiritual root, right? Do you usually practice the martial arts of ice and snow? My brother, Wei Xinjin, is a great expert in this area. You can talk about this." The purpose was too obvious, and Lin was helpless. There wasn't much else he could say if he kept talking about it, so he might as well make things clear first. He didn't want Shang Yuhua to think that he was the one chasing her. Shang Yuhua was slightly startled. She glanced at Wei Xinjin and said lightly, "I am not interested in the martial arts of ice and snow." "Thank you, Master Lin, for your concern." Wei Xinjin's face turned pale. He lowered his head and became even more silent. Lin thought that this was not good. It was not good to continue like this. He had to find a way to change Shang Yuhua's impression of Wei Xinjin. Unfortunately, before Lin spoke, Shang Wani said, "Master Lin, the elixirs sold in your Tiandan Pavilion are all high quality. I wonder if you can cooperate with our Universal Chamber of Commerce? Please believe that we will definitely give you the greatest sincerity." Originally, Shang Wani would not take the initiative to mention this. However, he could also see that the purpose of Lin Yi's visit was not to get to know him, Shang Wani. Instead, he wanted to matchmake snow sword factions Wei Xinjin with his daughter. Since this was the case, it was better to quickly mention the cooperation, lest he missed the opportunity. Chapter 58:14. Shang Wani's face suddenly darkened. He nodded lightly and said, "Master Lin is right. I was rude." The elixir business was definitely a profitable business. Shang Wani proposed to cooperate with Tiandan Pavilion because he wanted to get the selling rights of Tiandan Pavilion's elixirs at a price lower than the retail price of Tiandan Pavilion, and then sell them to the West and North Islands through the Universal Chamber of Commerce. Just like how the high-grade pills in the East Continent were prohibited from being sold on other islands without a permit, the pills on each island were also prohibited from being sold on other islands without a permit. If one was caught doing so, they would be labeled as a smuggler, and there was nothing left for them to discuss. Now Tiandan Pavilion's elixirs were in the limelight. If someone wanted to buy them on the Middle Island, he could go directly to Tiandan Pavilion. However, the elixirs of Tiandan Pavilion couldn't be bought on other islands for the time being. Shang Wani was interested in this business opportunity. However, without the permission of Tiandan Pavilion, even if he bought the elixirs, he wouldn't dare to sell them on other islands. Lin Yi's meaning was also very clear. If the elixirs of Tiandan Pavilion were to be sold on other islands, the first choice would be the Hong's Chamber of Commerce, not the Universal Chamber of Commerce. Since there was no possibility of cooperation, Shang Wani's attitude toward Lin naturally became cold. Wei Xinjin was secretly anxious and thought, "Boss, aren't you here to help me matchmake them? Why did you directly refuse him like this? You should at least respond perfunctorily and say something like, 'I'll think about it.' Or is this boss's strategy of loosening the reins only to grasp them better? Forget it, forget it. I can't understand boss's wisdom. I'd better follow boss firmly. Thinking about how his impression in Shang Yuhua's heart was probably quite bad. Even if Lin Yi perfunctorily brushed off Shang Wani, there might not be any changes. Wei Shinjin was a little disheartened. He could only hope that his boss had some way to reverse the situation. Lin Yi knew that Shang Wani valued the reputation of Tianden Pavilion, but he just couldn't agree to anything. Therefore, he didn't care about the change of Shang Wani's attitude. Instead, he began to focus on building a bridge between Wei Shinjin and Shang Yuhua. Miss Shang, as far as I know, if a person with a water spiritual root can cultivate an ice and snow martial skill, its power will be more powerful than a pure water martial skill. Actually, you can give it a try. Isn't the purpose of our cultivation to pursue powerful abilities? If you can give some pointers to Wei Shinjin's water martial techniques, that would be even better. Lin Yi couldn't think of any better ideas at the moment, so he could only forcefully create a topic for the two of them to talk about. Although Wei Shinjin was grateful for Lin Yi's efforts, he didn't have any expectations. It was probably impossible for him to have a good chat with Shang Yuhua today. Sure enough, Shang Yuhua said to Lin Yi indifferently, "Master Lin, I know my own situation very well. I'm not interested in ice and snow martial skills. As for teaching others water martial skills, I don't think I have the ability to do so, so you don't have to say any more." Previously, when Shang Wani was enthusiastic towards Lin Yi, Shang Yuhua would still have some scruples. But now there was no need to be polite. She was just short of telling Lin Yi to mind his own business. Lin Yi didn't know what to say for a moment. Wei Shinjin was such a disappointing thing. He didn't even have the courage to talk to Shang Yuhua. Relying on Lin Yi alone wouldn't be of much use. Shang Yuhua's pretty face was frosty. She turned to Wei Shinjin and said, "I've heard of you. Originally, I thought you were a person worthy of sympathy. But now, it seems that I thought too much. Just now, you took the initiative to provoke Li Zhaoyi from the Dan Hall. Later, you realized that there was no chance, so you turned to provoke me, Shang Yuhua. What kind of person do you think I, Shang Yuhua, am? Do you really think that you can provoke me at will?" Wei Shinjin's face became paler and paler. He quickly shook his head and waved his hand. "It's not like this, Miss Shang. Listen to my explanation." "There is nothing to explain. I, Shang Yuhua, am not deaf or blind. Don't tell me that I don't know how to distinguish what I saw with my own eyes," Shang Yuhua said coldly. She didn't want to give any patience to Wei Shinjin. Wei Shinjin was suddenly speechless. When facing Shang Yuhua, he already had some symptoms of brain short-circuiting. Now that she said it, his mind was even more blank, and there was no possibility of thinking. Lin raised his hand and said, "Miss Shang, you really misunderstood what happened just now. Didn't you see what happened to Zheng Tianqing later?" Wei Shinjin did lose his composure in front of Li Zhaoyi, but I can guarantee with my name, Lin Yi, that from the time we sat down to the time it happened, he didn't look at Li Zhaoyi at all because you attracted all his attention. In this case, do you think he would suddenly do those things to Li Zhaoyi? Shang Yuhua's pretty face was slightly red. Obviously, she didn't expect Lin Yi to say it so straightforwardly, but this didn't change her view of Wei Shinjin. "Master Lin, I said that you don't need to worry about my affairs. As for your friend, I, Shang Yuhua, am also not interested. Can you understand what I mean?" Wei Shinjin was quite depressed. He nodded slightly and said, "I understand, boss. Don't say anything more. Let's go." Shang Yuhua waved her hand and said, "You don't have to go. I'm already full. Father, let's go. Let Master Lin and his friend enjoy the food slowly." "Well, Master Lin, enjoy your meal. I'll leave first." Although Shang Wani was not as enthusiastic as before, he still did the proper etiquette. He stood up and cupped his fist to say goodbye. Then, without waiting for Lin Yi's answer, he left with Shang Yuhua. "Boss, thank you for helping me this time. It seems that I and Shang Yuhua are not fated to be together." "No, it's not fated to be together. Let's just forget about this matter." Wei Shinjin sighed and shook his head unconsciously. Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "Are you a person who gives up so easily? Or should I say, you actually don't really like Shan Yuhua? Otherwise, why would you give up so easily? Nothing in this world is easy to achieve. The more difficult and dangerous it is, the more precious it is in the end. If you aren't afraid of regretting in the future, then you can give up. But if you really like Shan Yuhua, you better pull yourself together." "Boss, I really like Shan Yuhua." Wei Xinjin suddenly straightened his body and said solemnly. But then he collapsed again. "But she has made it clear that she doesn't want to see me. What should I do?" Chapter 58:15. Wei Xinjin's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, "Boss, you're right. With Shan Yuhua's talent, appearance, and family background, if it was easy to pursue her, she would have been taken back by someone else. I can't give up. As long as I don't give up, there will be a chance." "It's good that you can think that way. Come on, hurry up and finish eating. We'll go back first. There will be plenty of opportunities on the way to the northernmost island. There will be a time when you can make Shan Yuhua look at you differently." Lin Yi was also relieved. At least he managed to appease Wei Xinjin. He didn't completely lose confidence. It's not easy to be a matchmaker. Lin Yi thought of the vow he made when he was the matchmaker for Zhou Ruoming and Liang Ruoqing in the secular world. How could he forget it so quickly? Even if he succeeded in matchmaking this time, he definitely couldn't be the host of the wedding anymore. When Lin Yi and Wei Xinjin finished eating, there were fewer people in the small restaurant. The Okuda Dam fleet would only finish loading and unloading the goods tomorrow morning, so they had to wait until tomorrow morning to set off. Lin Yi was thinking if he should go back to the Tiandan pavilion first. It wouldn't be too late to come back after daybreak. However, there wasn't much time left until daybreak. The goods of the fleet might have finished loading and unloading in advance, so he didn't get off the ship. On the way back to his room, Wei Xinjin was worried and complacent. Lin Yi told him to go back to sleep, lest he got schizophrenia. Remembering that he still owed Hou Guanqi a mountain-gazing pill, Lin Yi went to his room. "Brother Hou, are you resting?" "I'm Lin Yi." Hou Guanqi quickly came to open the door. It seemed that he didn't rest much. "Brother Lin, it's great that you can come to me. Please come in. Originally, I was thinking of going to look for you, but I didn't want to disturb your rest, so I didn't go. Brother Hou, if you need anything, you can find me at any time. Don't be shy." Lin Yi said with a smile and followed Hou Guanqi into his room. After the door was closed and the restrictions on it took effect, Lin Yi took out a jade bottle and said, "Brother Hou, this is a mountain-gazing pill. Take it back and report." "Brother Lin, you've already refined the mountain-gazing pill?" Hou Guanqi said in surprise. At the same time, he eagerly took the jade bottle and opened the bottle cap to have a look. A faint pill fragrance wafted into the air. Hou Guanqi's spirit was instantly shaken, and his cultivation showed signs of loosening. However, he did not dare to smell too much and quickly closed the bottle. The mountain-gazing pill was not something he could use at his current level. If he used it, there would only be disadvantages and no benefits. It's really the mountain-gazing pill, and it's a special grade mountain-gazing pill. Hou Guanqi looked at Lin Yi in amazement. This quality of the mountain-gazing pill was not something that any profound level 1 alchemist could refine. Perhaps even a profound level 2 alchemist could not guarantee that they could refine a special grade mountain-gazing pill. More importantly, how long had it been since Lin Yi obtained the mountain-gazing stone? He was simply a monster in alchemy. Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "Brother Hou, actually I refined this mountain-gazing pill using the divine sense pill fire. If possible, I suggest that you also cultivate your divine sense, and then try to condense the divine sense pill fire as soon as possible. In this way, it will be very helpful to your alchemy ability." Hou Guanqi was slightly startled, and then nodded with a dignified expression. "Thank you, Lin brothers, for reminding me. I will find a way to temper my divine sense." If there is a chance in the future, I will also find some cultivation methods related to divine sense, and strive to condense the divine sense pill fire as soon as possible. When Ho Guanqi, Kai Zhongyan, and others failed to condense the divine sense pill fire, he did not pay too much attention to it. Anyway, not having the divine sense pill fire did not affect alchemy. After all, he was still familiar with the various attributes of the true qi pill fire. But after seeing the special grade mountain-gazing pill refined by Lin Yi using the divine sense pill fire, Ho Guanqi made up his mind to find a way to improve the strength of his divine sense. Not only must he condense the pill fire, but he must also have enough divine sense to support the divine sense pill fire to refine a furnace of pills. Although this was not something that could be achieved in a short period of time, he must first pay attention to it. Lin Yi smiled and said, "If Brother Ho can successfully condense the divine sense pill fire, I believe that with Brother Ho's alchemy level, you will definitely have a major breakthrough. Then I will thank you for your auspicious words." Ho Guanqi smiled and cupped his fists towards Lin Yi. "Since I want to cultivate my divine sense, then I will shamelessly ask Brother Lin for a favor." "Brother Ho is too polite. If there is anything you need, just tell me. As long as I can do it, I will absolutely not say no," Lin Yi said solemnly. For Ho Guanqi, he was really grateful, not to mention taking care of the Tiandan Pavilion. Just this time, the mountain-gazing stone and the spirit-tempering pill were things he urgently needed. It was simply a great help. Ho Guanqi laughed and said, "Then I will thank Brother Lin in advance. In fact, I have kept all the divine sense grass roots you gave me. As for the mountain-gazing stone, I used my own things to exchange for it. Now I can't condense the divine sense pill fire, so it is impossible to refine the spirit-tempering pill. But if I want to cultivate my divine sense, the spirit-tempering pill is the best thing." So Lin Yi immediately understood the meaning of Ho Guanqi. He wanted to ask Lin Yi to refine the pill. But this was a trivial matter. Refining the spirit-tempering pill was originally in Lin Yi's plan. Refining it once or twice was not a big deal at all. "Brother Ho, rest assured, I can definitely refine the spirit-tempering pill. Just leave this matter to me." Lin Yi smiled slightly and said very straightforwardly. Ho Guanqi was suddenly overjoyed. With Lin Yi refining the mountain-gazing pill, how could he fail to refine the spirit-tempering pill? If he could have 20 or 30 spirit-tempering pills, it was possible for the strength of his divine sense to increase by more than 10 times. Unfortunately, he also knew that this was only a dream. The spirit-tempering pill was not effective. Even if he really had 20 or 30 spirit-tempering pills, the restrictions would not be able to improve his divine sense that much. "Lin brothers, these are the divine sense grass roots you gave me. You can see how many you can refine. The rest will be your reward. And if you successfully refine the spirit-tempering pill, I only need half of it." Ho Guanqi took out the jade box that Lin Yi had given him before. The divine sense grass roots inside had not been moved. There were still as many as before. Although he said half, in fact, Ho Guanqi thought that about 10 or so spirit-tempering pills would be enough for him. He could still exchange them for other heaven and earth treasures. Chapter 58:16. Ho Guanqi was slightly stunned, and then he burst into laughter and said, all right. I misspoke. Since that's the case, then I won't hold back. In the future, Brother Lin, your business is my business. If you have any instructions, I won't refuse. Brother Ho, you're too kind. Tian Chan and Sydney have always been under your care. Don't worry about such a small matter. Lin Yi smiled and waved his hand as he took the jade box from Ho Guanqi's hands. In fact, Lin Yi didn't even want to accept the consciousness grass root. Giving 10 or 20 spirit-tempering pills to Ho Guanqi was a small matter, but Ho Guanqi would be too embarrassed to accept it. Since that was the case, there was no need for the trouble. Brother Ho, last time you said that these consciousness grass roots can be divided into 30 to 40 portions of spirit-tempering pill ingredients. Is that right? Lin Yi shook the jade box and smiled at Ho Guanqi. Ho Guanxi nodded. That's right. To be precise, it can be divided into 36 portions of ingredients. Of course, there are always failures when it comes to making pills. But with Brother Lin's ability, I think 20 pills shouldn't be a problem, right? Huh. Brother Ho, aren't you underestimating me a little too much? Lin Yi looked at Ho Guanxi oddly. A normal refiner with a 50% success rate was already pretty good. But Ho Guanxi's Shinnon cauldron and the automated refinement system were heaven-defying existences. A 100% success rate was considered a failure, and exceeding 100% was a normal phenomenon. Ho Guanxi was pleasantly surprised. Could it be that Brother Lin's success rate is quite high? Could it be 90%? This was already Ho Guanxi's bold guess. As for 100% success rate, other than Zhang Liju, no one else on Sky-class island could achieve that. Lin Yi smiled mysteriously and did not answer Ho Guanxi. His Shinnon cauldron was a secret. It was better not to let others know, even if Ho Guanxi was a trustworthy person. Brother Ho, let's not talk about Dan first. In fact, I want to say that these spiritual awareness grassroots are far more than 36 sets of materials. Lin Yi did not open the jade box, but he also knew how many spiritual consciousness grassroots were inside. After all, he had personally placed them inside. Ho Guanxi immediately shook his head and said, "That's impossible. I've measured it myself. In fact, there might not even be 36 pieces. Because it's a whole piece now, it's inevitable that there will be losses when it's divided. Perhaps there will only be 35 pieces in the end." Speaking of this, Ho Guanxi suddenly froze for a moment and then said with joy, "I understand. Brother Lin, you mean spiritual awareness, grassroot. This is spiritual awareness, grassroot." Yes, it's good that Brother Ho understands. Lin Yi smiled and stood up. He cupped his fists and said, "Then I'll go back first today. The final number of spirit-tempering pills will definitely make Brother Ho satisfied. Brother Lin, wait a minute. Please tell me, what's the difference between spiritual awareness grassroot and spiritual awareness grass?" Ho Guanxi stood up and asked excitedly. He and Lin Yi were the same as before. They both ignored the fact that spiritual awareness grassroot was better than spiritual awareness grass. So in calculating, they calculated according to the amount of spiritual awareness grass. This was indeed a huge loophole, and it was simply unimaginable for an elixir refiner. It's about a ratio of 1 to 2. In other words, these spiritual awareness grassroots of Brother Ho can theoretically refine 70 spirit-tempering pills. Lin Yi didn't mean to hide it, but he also didn't tell the truth. In theory, it could refine 70 pills, but in the Shinnon cauldron, at least 80 pills could be refined. It was not convenient to tell Ho Guanxi about this. Ho Guanxi couldn't help but take a deep breath. Of course, he wanted all the spirit-tempering pills, but he didn't let this get to his head. If he really did this, even if Lin Yi didn't say anything, he would be embarrassed to face Lin Yi in the future. Brother Lin, a mountain-gazing stone is not worth so many spirit-tempering pills. Listen to me, although the grade of the mountain-gazing pill is higher than the spirit-tempering pill. But in terms of value, a mountain-gazing pill and a spirit-tempering pill are almost the same. The mountain-gazing stone I gave you is only 5 sets of materials. Not to mention that you have already given me a top-grade mountain-gazing pill. Even if you didn't give it to me, at most 10 spirit-tempering pills are enough to compensate for the mountain-gazing stone. Ho Guanxi looked at Lin Yi very seriously and said. He also stopped Lin Yi from refuting. Pointing to the jade box in Lin Yi's hand, he said, "If there are only 30 sets of materials here, and Brother Lin has about 50% success rate, I won't refuse all of them. But with Brother Lin's success rate and so many sets of materials here, I absolutely can accept it. Just to refine so many spirit-tempering pills, the time required and the consumption of divine sense is extremely shocking. Brother, you can't be so ungrateful." Lin Yi opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Was he supposed to tell him that he didn't refine pills one by one, but 5 at a time? Also, Others might not be able to refine one pill in a day or two, but he could at least refine 8 or 10 batches a day. As for the consumption of divine sense, Lin Yi was not worried at all. When he was at sea, he could casually catch a sea beast and use it to replenish his divine sense. At the same time, he could also get a sea beast's Niden to refine pills. Brother Lin, I appreciate your kindness, but I only need 10 spirit tempering pills. I won't take any more. With 10 spirit tempering pills, I estimate that the strength of my divine sense should be able to greatly improve. As for the rest, you can keep them for your own use. This matter is settled. If you say anything more, then you don't consider me as a friend. Ho Guanqi didn't give Lin Yi a chance to speak and directly finished his own words. Seeing that Lin Yi seemed to want to say something, Ho Guanqi followed up and said, Brother Lin, do you know the restrictions of spirit tempering pills? Lin Yi was slightly startled and shook his head. What are the restrictions of spirit tempering pills? I asked Brother Ho to enlighten me. I really haven't heard of it. In fact, I also accidentally saw it in the ancient books. Spirit tempering pills are not always effective. Otherwise, these spiritual awareness grassroots can be used to refine dozens of spirit tempering pills. Wouldn't it be able to enhance people's divine sense to an extremely terrifying level? Ho Guanqi pointed to the jade box containing the spiritual awareness grassroots and felt some regret in his heart. If there were no such restrictions, he might have thickened his face and asked for more spirit tempering pills. Not waiting for Lin Yi to ask, Ho Guanqi continued, the effect of spirit tempering pills on the tempering of divine sense is quite amazing. But unfortunately, in each big level, you can only take 1 spirit tempering pill. Eating more won't have any effect. Only when you enter the next big level can you take another spirit tempering pill, and the effect will get lower and lower. Chapter 58:17. After entering the gold core stage, a soul tempering pill may be able to improve from the early gold core stage to the middle gold core stage, or even the peak of the middle gold core stage. But the effect is definitely weaker than that of the foundation establishment stage. In the future, you can only rely on your own cultivation and so on. The heavenly Tao realm and the magnate realm are at most 8 soul tempering pills. I even asked for 2 more. There was one more thing that Ho Guanqi didn't say, that was, with his aptitude, his strength might not be able to enter the magnate realm, and the strength of his divine sense would not exceed his own level. So in theory, having 4 soul tempering pills was enough. The rest of the soul tempering pills were mostly useless to him. Lin Yi really didn't know that the soul tempering pill actually had such a limit. He had to send a letter to Tianchan later. It didn't matter if it was a waste, but he was afraid that there would be any side effects if he ate too much. The next time Lin Yi refined the soul tempering pill, he would also try to take it continuously to see if it was really the case. However, he already believed that what Ho Guanqi said was not false, because the effect of using the divine sense grass root to temper his divine sense was getting weaker and weaker. It was probably because the share of the soul tempering pill had been used up, and he could only continue to temper his divine sense at the next big level. After understanding that Ho Guanqi was not being polite, Lin Yi shrugged helplessly and said, Well, since Brother Ho said that, then let's do it this way. When I refine the soul tempering pill, I will give a few to Brother Kai and Captain Okuda and say that it was from you. Haha, it's up to you. Anyway, it's yours. If you like to give it to others in my name, it has nothing to do with me, as long as I have my share. Ho Guanqi laughed again, and his mood was extremely good. Lin Yi was also happy. Thinking about it, it was a small matter anyway. He was too lazy to say more. Well, this time I will really take my leave when the soul tempering pill is refined. I will send a few over first. Brother Ho can start to temper his divine sense. After he finished speaking, he cupped his fists and left with the jade box. Ho Guanqi quickly walked to the door and bid farewell to Lin Yi. The two of them were diagonally opposite each other, so there was no need to be so polite. Lin Yi didn't return to his room. Instead, he took out a piece of paper and wrote down the restrictions of the spirit-quenching pill on it. He asked the guards here to send it to Tiandan Pavilion and give it to Tianchan, who on this warship didn't know Lin Yi, the honorary vice captain. The guard felt very honored to be able to do this for him. He even refused to accept the spirit jades that Lin Yi wanted to give him as thanks. He took the paper and directly ran out. After returning to his room, Lin Yi opened the restriction on the door and prepared to start refining the spirit-quenching pill. Along the way, he could refine a lot of spirit-quenching pills, but he had to give them away, auction them, and use them for himself. If he didn't refine more, it really wouldn't be enough. However, before Lin Yi could take out the Shinnon cauldron, his expression suddenly turned cold. He turned his head and looked at the door. The restriction that had just taken effect had been forcibly destroyed. The various restrictions on the ancient warship were not set up by Okuda Dam later, but they were already there when the warship existed. That was why they could isolate Lin Yi's powerful divine sense. Otherwise, with the current level of divine sense of the Heaven Stage Island, there was no need for such restrictions at all. As for the defensive ability of these restrictions, to be honest, it was not strong. Any master of the mysterious ascending stage could easily break it with brute force. Of course, under normal circumstances, if someone came to find someone, they would just gently touch the restriction to remind the person inside that there was a guest visiting. Forcibly breaking the restriction almost made it clear that the enemy was attacking. Lin Yi's eyes narrowed slightly, and his powerful divine sense rushed out like a tide. Through the broken restriction, he could easily see a middle-aged man with a thin face and a hooked nose reaching out to push the door with a cold face. The next moment, the hooked-nosed man had already flashed in like a ghost. While closing the door, he did not even say a word and directly launched an attack on Lin Yi. A sharp, blade-like chi split the air in the room and appeared in front of Lin Yi in an instant. If it was an ordinary master of the mysterious ascending stage, his head might have been directly cut off by this chi. Unfortunately, Lin Yi was not an ordinary person. Although this hooked-nosed man had the strength of the mysterious ascending great perfection, in the eyes of Lin Yi, he was really not a great person. When he was in the early stage of the mysterious ascending stage, he was able to fight against an opponent in the early stage of the mountain opening stage. Now that he was already at the peak of the late stage of the mysterious ascending stage, a mere mysterious ascending great perfection actually dared to come and attack him. Wasn't he just sending himself to death? There was no need for any profound martial arts. Lin Yi just stretched out his hand, and the invisible chi was imprisoned in front of him. Then his 5 fingers closed, and there was a slight sound of metal cracking. The metal attribute chi of the hooked-nosed man suddenly dissipated. Not even a speck of dust was blown away. Good boy, you have some skills. The hooked-nosed man's pupils shrank slightly, and he snorted in a low voice. Unfortunately, you are destined to fall today. Don't make any unnecessary resistance. I will give you a quick death. Before he finished his sentence, the aquiline nosed man's body flashed, and countless sharp pure energy blades shot out, enveloping Lin Yi completely. If he didn't have a way to deal with it, he'd be riddled with holes in the next moment. Sword shower kill. The hooked-nosed man's mouth showed a smug smile. This was his strongest offensive martial arts, not to mention the mysterious ascending stage. Even if it was a master of the early mountain opening stage, if he was caught off guard and faced this move of his sword shower kill at such a close distance, it was very likely that he would suffer a big loss. The metal attribute chi was originally full of killing intent, and this move of sword shower kill brought this kind of killing intent into full play. He did not believe that Lin Yi could resist this killer move. If it was not for the fact that this was the ancient warship of Okuda Dam, and he had to finish the battle quickly so as not to alarm others, the hooked-nosed man would not have used his strongest offensive martial arts at the beginning. Since he had used it, it was naturally the result of killing in one blow. Lin Yi sneered. His current divine sense was so strong that when the hooked-nosed man used the sword shower kill, all the changes in strengths were actually already grasped by him. If it was a master of the mountain opening stage who used this move, Perhaps Lin Yi would also have to temporarily avoid it. Mysterious ascending great circle? It was not enough. A low dragon roar sounded in the room, and the 5 elements of killing intent turned into a dragon shape, baring its fangs and claws to meet the wave of sword qi rain. After the sharp metal attribute, qi met the 5 elements of killing intent. It suddenly converged all of its sharpness, like a tempered steel turning soft. All of it surrounded the dragon shape of the 5 elements of killing intent, and there was no longer any threat. Chapter 58:18. At this moment, the aquiline-nosed man's heart was filled with endless regret. He regretted that he did not find out who he was going to deal with before he came. His level was obviously lower than his, but this kind of strength was enough to crush him mercilessly. I can't retreat. If I retreat, I will die. The aquiline-nosed man was already a little scared, but he still said so to himself in his heart. He was extremely experienced in fighting. He knew that his momentum had been completely suppressed by Lin Yi. If he wanted to retreat and escape, it would only become a situation of 1,000 miles. The only way to survive was to face the difficulty. The aquiline-nosed man gritted his teeth and forcibly suppressed the trace of timidity in his heart. He put his hands together and stirred up all the qi in his body. At the same time, at the cost of burning his blood essence and reducing his lifespan, he gained more power in a short period of time. Then he desperately faced the 5-colored dragon. All of this happened in an instant. Lin Yi also admired the decisiveness of the aquiline-nosed man. He was able to make the right choice in a flash. Not everyone could do that. Unfortunately, even if he burned his own blood essence, the strength he gained was still above the profound ascension great circle. At most, he could only be considered as half a step into the mountain opening stage. If he wanted to fight against Lin Yi's dragon-shaped 5 elements murderous aura, it was far from enough. There was no loud explosion, nor was there any surging qi. The aquiline-nosed man's desperate counterattack to save himself was like a small stone thrown into the sea. Without causing any waves, it was completely strangled and swallowed by the dragon-shaped 5 elements murderous aura. Then he could only watch in despair as the 5-colored dragon rushed into his body, and scrupulously passing through his meridians and destroying them. Lin Yi looked coldly at the aquiline-nosed man. The 5 elements murderous aura, combined with his powerful divine sense, exerted power beyond his imagination. Moreover, he could control it as if it was his own arm, without the slightest sense of sluggishness. The aquiline-nosed man did not die. He just fell to the ground and kept twitching. Lin Yi did not intend to kill him now, at least not before he knew who sent him. Tell me, who sent you? Lin Yi stepped forward slowly and looked down at the hook-nosed man as he asked indifferently. Under Lin Yi's control, the 5 elements murderous qi was slightly restrained so that the hook-nosed man wouldn't even have the ability to speak. The aquiline-nosed man's face was pale as he gasped for breath. His forehead was covered with beads of sweat. In such a short time, his clothes were drenched from the inside out. Hee, you don't have to ask. I'm afraid I'll scare you to death if I tell you. If you have the guts, kill your grandfather. Let's see who will die more miserably in the end. The hook-nosed man was tough and did not say the answer that Lin Yi wanted to know. However, looking at his arrogant appearance, it seemed that he had a strong backing and was not afraid of Lin Yi at all. Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "Turns out that you're so awesome. It was me who was disrespectful. In fact, it doesn't matter if you say it or not. I just asked you to give you a chance. Since you don't need it, then forget it. Anyway, with the soul-searching technique, I can know what I want to know." The hook-nosed man's expression suddenly changed. He knew how overbearing the soul-searching technique was. If Lin Yi really used the soul-searching technique on him, even if he didn't die, he would most likely be crippled. In this case, it was better to simply die. What's worse was that even if he could commit suicide now, his primordial spirit could not escape the pain brought by the soul-searching technique. It could be said that Lin Yi's words had completely hit this guy's soft spot. He was not afraid of death, but he was really afraid of having his soul searched. In the past, when Lin Yi said that he would use the soul-searching technique on people, it was simply to scare people. But after a trip to the ancient small Jianghu, he learned the method of devouring primordial spirit. Soul-searching technique was just a piece of cake. Even if he had not learned it, he could easily deduce it. So this time, he really wasn't trying to scare the hook-nosed man. The hook-nosed man's expression kept changing. He didn't know if Lin Yi was trying to scare him, but he didn't dare to try. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "You can't use the soul-searching technique on me. Otherwise, don't even think about leaving the Middle Island. I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. I'm the Alchemy Hall's guest. You can kill me, but if you dare to use the soul-searching technique on me and cause some secrets of the Alchemy Hall to be leaked, don't mention you. Even Ho Guanqi won't have a good ending." Lin Yi frowned slightly. He could feel that the hook-nosed man wasn't lying. The identity of the Alchemy Hall's guest should be true. The consequences of using the soul-searching technique were most likely true. Lin Yi didn't care, but he had to consider Tian Chan and Sydney in the Tiandan Pavilion, as well as Ho Guanqi, Kai Zhongyang, the Will of Heaven, and others who were related to him. With the high status of the Alchemy Hall in the Middle Island, if Lin Yi really used the soul-searching technique on a guest of the Alchemy Hall, even Okuda State wouldn't be able to protect him and the Tiandan Pavilion. Seeing Lin Yi's hesitation, the hook-nosed man finally let out a sigh of relief. If he knew this would be the result, he wouldn't have agreed to find trouble with Lin Yi even if he was beaten to death. But since it was already like this, as long as he didn't die, he would definitely find a way to get back at him. This time it's my fault. We can be considered to have no discord, no concord. Why don't we just forget about it? The hook-nosed man looked at Lin Yi carefully and asked. It would be great if he could use the name of the Alchemy Hall to scare Lin Yi and escape with his life. It wouldn't be too late to take revenge after planning. Of course, the hook-nosed man also felt that it was impossible to move Lin Yi with just a few words, so he reluctantly took out a small jade box from his arms and said with pain, "As long as you promise not to mention this matter, then this mountain gazing stone will be given to you as compensation." Mountain gazing stone? Lin Yi was really a little surprised this time. Why was the mountain gazing stone so common? Could it be obtained so easily? If he knew that he could get the mountain gazing stone this way, he wouldn't have needed to exchange it with Ho Guanqi. However, thinking that this hook-nosed man was at the mystic ascension great perfection and was about to break through to the mountain opening stage, it was reasonable for him to collect the mountain gazing stone. He was a guest of the Alchemy Hall. As long as he had something, it was basically no problem to ask the people of the Alchemy Hall to refine elixirs. The problem was that there were not many people in the Alchemy Hall who could refine the mountain gazing pill. So he kept the mountain gazing stone and didn't use it. This time, the hook-nosed man was also distressed to exchange it for his life. However, he thought that after killing Lin Yi in the future, he could still get the thing back, so he calmed down. Chapter 5819. Lin Yi closed the jade box and said with a faint smile, "This is my spoil of war, so I will accept it." The hook-nosed man's face suddenly turned ugly. Lin Yi was not going to let him go after taking his things. However, he could not say anything else because Lin Yi was right. His life was in the hands of others, so naturally the things on him were not his own. Lin Yi was reminded by the hook-nosed man, so he simply used his divine sense to scan the guy's clothes to see if there were any other good things. Unfortunately, other than some spiritual jades, there was nothing else to rob. It should be that the hook-nosed man did not bring everything with him, and only kept the most important mountain-gazing stone close to him. In the end, Lin Yi took advantage of it. With a mountain-gazing stone as a reward, Lin Yi was already quite satisfied. It did not matter if there was nothing else. With a wave of his hand, he used his spiritual chi to lift the hook-nosed man in the air and said coldly, "You said that you are a consecrator of the Pill Hall, so there must be a lot of people who know you, right?" Since you dare to come and kill me, then let everyone see whether you are really that awesome and whether the pill hall will really stand up for you. What do you want?" The hook-nosed man could not care less about his mountain-gazing stone. After hearing Lin Yi's words, he had an extremely bad guess in his heart, and his expression immediately changed. Lin Yi smiled slightly and said, "You will know soon what I want to do." After saying that, Lin Yi directly carried the hook-nosed man out of the room. From the time this guy broke the restriction and broke into the room to launch a sneak attack until now, only a little more than a minute had passed. The alarm of the restriction being damaged had been sent to the control room of the ancient worship, and it was estimated that it had just been sent to Okuda Dam. As for the rooms on the side, whether it was Wei Shinjin's, Ho Guanqi's, or Kai Zhongyang's, because the restriction of their rooms had not been touched, they still did not know that such a thing had happened in Lin Yi's room. If the hook-nosed man's target was not Lin Yi, it was estimated that this guy would have already left the ancient worship. This kind of defense really made Lin Yi a little dissatisfied, so he had to find a chance to mention it to Okuda Dam. Of course, there was originally a guard here, but he was sent by Lin Yi to run errands. This guy could be considered lucky. Otherwise, if the hook-nosed man entered Lin Yi's room, he would have conveniently killed him. After walking out of the room, Lin Yi released his divine sense and touched all the restrictions on the ancient worship. Since he wanted to make a big scene, it would be too boring if there were too few people. "Someone ambushed us in the VIP rooms of the ancient worship, and we've already caught him. If you're interested, you can come up to the deck and see if you know the assassin." Lin Yi used his pure chi to cover his voice, sending it to all the corridors. This time, he had made up his mind to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. So what if it was a priest from the Hall of Elixirs? Lin Yi wanted everyone in Central Island to know that the people of Tiandan Pavilion were not to be messed with. Even if it was a priest from the Hall of Elixirs, there was nothing much to say. As long as he didn't search the hook-nosed man's soul, Lin Yi was in the right. He didn't believe that the Hall of Elixirs would fall out with him because of this. If that really happened, then Lin Yi would be disappointed in his cheat master, Zhang Liju. Ho Guanqi was the first to come out. He had sent Lin Yi off not long ago, and was thinking about the spirit-tempering pill when he felt the restriction on the door being touched. He thought that Lin Yi had come back because of something, so he quickly opened the door and saw Lin Yi carrying the hook-nosed man towards the deck. Of course, what Lin Yi said made Ho Guanqi understand what was going on. The problem was that he really did know that hook-nosed man. "Brother Lin, Brother Lin." Ho Guanqi called twice and caught up to Lin Yi. He looked at the hook-nosed man in Lin Yi's hand in surprise. "Priest Sure, you went to Brother Lin's room and ambushed him?" Lin Yi wasn't surprised that Ho Guanqi knew this hook-nosed man. He just confirmed what the guy had said, that he really was a priest from the Hall of Elixirs. "Brother Ho, you know this guy? He's called Shijun, right?" Lin Yi didn't stop and continued walking towards the deck. Ho Guanqi felt like he was in a difficult position. One was Lin Yi, whom he had tried his best to befriend, and the other was a priest from the Hall of Elixirs. It wasn't appropriate to help either side. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have come out. "Brother Lin, how are you going to deal with Priest Sure?" It couldn't be helped. Since he had already come out, Ho Guanqi could only force himself to ask. No matter what, he had to ensure that Lin Yi wouldn't get into more trouble first. Lin Yi smiled faintly and said, "This priest sure wants to kill me, but I don't know him. I asked him who sent him, but he wasn't willing to say. Since that's the case, don't blame me for killing him as an example to others. I want everyone to know that the people of Tiandan Pavilion can't be easily bullied. If they dare to make a move on us, they should be prepared to be killed instead." Ho Guanqi couldn't help but secretly complain. Although Lin Yi's tone was light, the murderous intent in it could directly make people shiver. Although Lin Yi was the reasonable one, if he really killed Shijun, the rift between him and the Hall of Elixirs wouldn't be easily repaired. Shijun wanted Ho Guanqi to say a few good words for him, but it was a pity that Lin Yi's 5 elements murderous intent was still raging in his body. Under Lin Yi's intentional control, he couldn't speak at all. Brother Lin, I'm not trying to persuade you, but it's best if you think twice about this. This Shijun was sent by the Hall of Elixirs to protect Master Li Zaoi, but I heard that he's already on House Zheng's side. Hou Guanqi said bitterly. Being able to say this much was already the limit. If he continued, not only would there be a rift between Lin Yi and the Hall of Elixirs, there would also be a rift between him and Lin Yi. Cai Zhongyang and Wei Xinjin also quickly followed, but Hou Guanqi didn't expect them to say anything. One was a follower of Lin Yi, and although the other was Zhang Liju's disciple, he didn't have much connection with the Hall of Elixirs. If they wanted to help, they would definitely help Lin Yi. As expected after knowing the situation, Cai Zhongyang didn't say anything beneficial to Shijun. Wei Xinjin even directly said that this kind of person should be killed on the spot. Chapter 58:20. Lin Yi casually threw Shijun on the ground, then said with a faint smile, Brother Okuda, this matter can't be blamed on you. If he had the intention to sneak attack, you couldn't have defended either. If it were sailing on the sea, the ancient warship would naturally have a layer of shielding. If outsiders wanted to board, they would immediately be aware. But now it was anchored in the harbor, and there were still people boarding or leaving. It was impossible for Okuda Ba to completely block it. Hence, such a loophole appeared. Okuda Ba said with a smile, Fortunately, Brother Lin, you're fine. Otherwise, even if I cut that bastard into 1,000 pieces, it won't be able to dispel the hatred in my heart. After saying that, Okuda Ba turned his attention to Shijun. The smile on his face also vanished. He swept a cold glance at Shijun and said, You're considered bold, daring to come to my ship alone to kill my brother. This is not putting me in your eyes at all. Do you think that I, Okuda Ba, can be bullied by others after leaving the Okuda family? Shijun's body trembled, and regret grew in his heart. He thought that he could kill Lin Yi in one blow, completely not giving Okuda Ba time to react. That was why he came. He didn't expect that the one killed in one blow was himself. Now that he was facing Okuda Ba directly, it would be a lie to say that he wasn't afraid. Although Okuda Ba did run away from the Okuda family, he never said that he severed ties with the Okuda family. After all, he was the Okuda family's third young master. To say that Nakajima didn't fear the Pill Hall's forces, the Okuda family was definitely one of them. He, a mere consecrator, really couldn't be compared to Okuda Ba. Brother Lin, do you know who this guy is? Okuda Ba also didn't know if he really didn't know Shijun. He turned his head and asked Lin Yi. Lin Yi nodded and said, I heard that he's the Pill Hall's consecrator, Shijun. Okuda Ba sneered and said, Pill Hall's consecrator, what a great background. Brother Lin, if it's not convenient for you to make a move, then let me take care of this guy for you. Elixir was a giant in Nakajima, after all. Even if Lin Yi was in the right, he'd still have to think twice before making a move. Okuda Ba, on the other hand, was different. Even if he didn't have the Okuda family behind him, just his own capital alone was enough for him to have nothing to fear from Elixir. Lin Yi smiled and said, Thank you, Okuda bro. I'll take care of this myself. Lin Yi said and smiled and said, Okuda Ba's Lin said, I will take care of this Jun but nod. Brother Yi, Lin Yi knew that this was probably just an expression of goodwill, but he was still very grateful. He smiled and cupped his fists in thanks. To be able to stand by his side so firmly in a situation like this, he was a friend worth having no matter what. In the time it took to say a few words, more and more people came to the deck. Among them were Zhang Dongjue, Li Zaoi, and other people from the Pill Hall. How dare you, Lin Yi? How dare you kidnap our consecrator? How dare you? Zhang Dongjue took a step forward and pointed at Lin Yi with a furious expression. But he didn't dare to go any further. What if he got too close to Lin Yi and got smashed to the ground as well? Lin Yi looked at Zhang Dongjue coldly and said, Zhang Dongjue, you didn't send this Shijun, did you? The consecrator of the Pill Hall can be used by the Vice Hall Master. Otherwise, Why would you be so agitated? Zhang Dongjue glared and said, Nonsense. You're slandering me. How could our consecrator do something like this? It must be you who wanted to deal with consecrator. That's why you framed him. Ha ha! You can always find a way to frame someone. Linny, I advise you to rein in before it's too late. Otherwise, the pill hall won't let you off. Ho Guanqi couldn't resist saying, Vice Hall Master Zheng, you don't know what happened. How can you be sure that it was Lin Yi who framed him? Furthermore, he and consecrator have no enmity in the past. They've never crossed paths before. Why is there a need to plot against consecrator? Ho Guanqi, you're a member of the Pill Hall and the Hall Master's nominal eldest disciple. Not only did you not contribute to the Pill Hall, you even defended the Pill Hall's enemy. Could it be that you and Lin Yi colluded with each other and deliberately targeted consecrator? Zhang Dongjue immediately dragged Ho Guanqi into the water with a cold smile. Didn't you say that Lin Yi and Shi Jun didn't cross paths? Then you, Ho Guanqi, and Shi Jun must have crossed paths, right? Ho Guanqi, this honest man, had never suffered such humiliation before. He was so angry that he couldn't speak. He couldn't refute anything. Lin Yi looked at Zhang Dongjue mockingly and said, Surname Zheng, I wasn't sure at first. Seeing you biting people like a mad dog, I'm relieved. You were the one who ordered Shi Jun to assassinate me. There's no doubt about that. Don't talk to me about evidence. I don't need any evidence for what I'm sure of. Lin Yi, who do you think you are? You want to use such a groundless excuse to deal with me. Zhang Dongjue? Hee. If you want to come at me, just come at me. What's the point of involving the unrelated consecrator? I, Zhang Dongjue, won't be as despicable as you, using such a boring excuse to frame innocent people. Zhang Dongjue felt a little guilty in his heart, but he definitely wouldn't back down on the surface. Unfortunately, his words were no longer as strong as before. Li Zhaoyi frowned slightly and said faintly, Stop arguing. Is there any misunderstanding? Let's get to the bottom of the matter first. Lin Yi glanced at Li Zhaoyi and said indifferently, Shi Jun forcibly broke the restriction of my room, broke into my room and tried to kill me. What misunderstanding can there be? The consecrator of the Pill Hall can be so lawless and kill people at will. Does he really think that Pill God Zhang isn't here, and Middle Island is under Zhang Dongjue's control? Zhang Dongjue's face was extremely ugly, but for some reason he didn't refute. Li Zhaoyi looked at Lin Yi with a strange expression, nodded slightly and stopped talking. Lin Yi was a little confused. This girl was really strange. She said something inexplicably and then stopped talking. Was this considered her responsibility as the chief alchemist of the Pill Hall? Li Zhaoyi didn't say anything anymore, and Zhang Dongjue stood up again, but this time he pointed his spear at Okuda Dam. Captain Okuda, Lin Yi is holding our Dan's master hostage on your ship. Don't you have anything to say? Isn't this looking down on our Pill Hall too much? Okuda didn't even look up. He said coldly, Who do you think you are? A person who helps Pill God Zhang manage the Pill Hall dares to represent the entire Pill Hall? Whether or not Lin Yi held Shi Jun hostage wasn't up to you to decide, but whether or not Shi Jun broke the lock on my ship and killed my brothers. That was up to me to decide. Trying to act mighty on my ship. Who gave you face? Chapter 58:21. It couldn't be helped. Okuda had a super family behind him. The entire Hall of Alchemy was at most on the same level as his family. Although Zhang Dongjue was a deputy hall master, he couldn't represent the entire Hall of Alchemy. Seeing this, Zhang Tianqing pointed at Okuda and sneered, Captain Okuda, are you trying to protect Lin Yi by talking about my uncle like that? Don't think that you're so great just because you have the Okuda family behind you. Although our Zheng family isn't as powerful as your Okuda family, but my ass. Do you have the right to speak on my Okuda Dam ship? Who do you think you are? How dare you point your finger at me? Do you want to die? Okuda slapped Zhang Tianqing's finger away. What the hell? Did he really think that he was a big shot? Okuda Ba didn't even put Zhang Dongjue in his eyes. The fact that he didn't slap this idiot to death was already considering that he was a businessman. You. Zhang Tianqing was furious. He was a genius from the East Continent, especially in front of Li Zhaoyi. Okuda Ba taught him a lesson so mercilessly. He almost lost his temper. Unfortunately, the guards on the ship instantly surrounded him, causing Zhang Tianqing to completely calm down. On this ancient battleship, it was simply too unwise to challenge Okuda Dam. Zhang Tianqing could only swallow his anger and wait for an opportunity to take revenge in the future. Lin Yi waved his hand at Okuda Ba and said with a smile, "Brother Okuda, I told you to let me handle this myself. You don't have to care about these clowns. Since everyone is here, I won't waste any more of your time. Today, Lin Yi will tell everyone here that whoever provokes me, no matter where he comes from, as long as he falls into my hands, there's only one ending, death." At the end, Lin Yi's tone was as cold as ice. His cold eyes scanned the entire place, and people like Shang Wani who had interacted with Lin Yi before felt their hearts skip a beat. They really didn't feel that Lin Yi had this kind of aura. Only now did they realize that he wasn't a simple person. Zhang Dongjue panicked. Sure, Jun was indeed on his side in the dark, but he couldn't bring this out in the open. If a practitioner from the pill hall was killed just like that, no matter what, Zhang Liju would investigate it when he came back. Some things would naturally surface, and this was something that Zhang Dongjue couldn't allow. Lin Yi, do you really want to be the enemy of the Hall of Alchemy? If you dare kill Master Shi, you'll have to face the wrath of our Hall Master Zhang Liju. Are you sure you and your friends can handle it? Zhang Dongjue barked. No matter what, he couldn't let Lin Yi kill Shi Jun. For this, he even brought up Zhang Liju's name. It was sad to think about it. Zhang Dongjue wanted to take the Hall of Alchemy from Zhang Liju's hands, but he still needed Zhang Liju's reputation to control the situation. Even if he could get the Hall of Alchemy, would it be his Hall of Alchemy? Lin Yi laughed mockingly. Zhang Dongjue, can't you change your words? You keep saying the same thing over and over again. Without Alchemy God Zhang's name, can't you live? Also, Okuda Bro already said it. Who do you think you are? You're just a steward who manages the Hall of Alchemy. Do you really think you're the master of the Hall of Alchemy? You're representing the Hall of Alchemy, representing Alchemy God Zhang. What a joke! Low snickers could be heard from the crowd, evidently thinking that Lin Yi's words made sense. Most of the people here were people with high statuses in Nakajima, and laughing was just laughing. No one was afraid of Zhang Dongjue, the vice head of the Hall of Alchemy. Li Zhaoyi still had that weird expression on her face. She looked up at Zhang Dongjue, then turned to Lin Yi, but didn't say anything. Okuda Ba, are you going to care about this or not? Do you really think you can stay out of this when a master of alchemy was killed on your ship? Could it be that Lin Yi is your VIP, but our Hall of Alchemy isn't? Do you still want to do business in the seas of the 5 major islands? Zhang Dongjue turned his head and shouted at Okuda Ba. He was already a little flustered and didn't see Tong Wulsuo, who had followed him on the ship, winking at him. Okuda Ba frowned slightly. He could ignore the Hall of Alchemy and Zhang Dongjue, but he couldn't ignore his own reputation. Lin Yi was right in this matter. But if he didn't do anything, it wouldn't be justifiable, and it would be detrimental to the future construction of the fleet. However, in a flash, Okuda Ba made a decision, and that was to stand firmly on Lin Yi's side. Zhang Dongjue, I don't need you to tell me what happened on my ship. Shi Jun broke the restriction and attacked Lin Yi, so he should be killed on the spot after being captured. Don't tell me that they're all VIPs. If they were all VIPs like you, I really wouldn't dare to accept your business. Okuda Ba said indifferently. Zhang Dongjue was right about one thing. He was also a VIP on this ship. So Okuda Ba restrained his tone a little. Zhang Dongjue laughed and said, Okuda Ba, don't talk about these useless things. I'll tell you directly, if you continue to side with Lin Yi and disregard the lives of our Hall of Alchemy, I will immediately go to the Maritime Association to impeach you. Don't forget, our Hall of Alchemy is also a VIP member of the Maritime Association. I don't believe that no one can control you. Okudaba's face was as calm as water. If he wanted to make a name for himself in this sea, he had to accept the jurisdiction of the Maritime Association. Unless he didn't do legitimate business and became a pirate, he couldn't ignore this matter. Okudaba really didn't care about Zhang Dongjue. He also believed that the Hall of Alchemy wouldn't go all out to deal with him. However, with Zhang Dongjue's character, it was really possible that he would go to the Maritime Association to complain and impeach him, which put him in a very difficult position. Lin Yi also saw Okudaba's difficulty. Of course, he wouldn't let his friend fall into a dilemma, so he simply said, "Brother Okuda, Shijun is actually not that important. After all, he's just a pawn. I will find the person behind him. So it doesn't matter if you don't kill him." Okudaba was obviously relieved. He also knew that Lin Yi was taking care of his face, so he said with a smile, "Brother Lin, you are broad-minded. There's really no need to care about this scoundrel. Don't worry, after this trip, I will definitely help you get justice." Chapter 58:22. For a man who could dominate the sea, being soft-hearted was definitely not a virtue, but being ruthless. Zhang Dongjue's body trembled slightly, and he felt a little regretful. Not only did he not kill Lin Yi this time, but he also completely offended Okudaba. If he thought about it carefully, it was really a big loss. Fortunately, Lin Yi finally relented and did not continue to say that he must kill Shijun. In this round, Zhang Dongjue won, and Lin Yi was slapped in the face by his own words. This was the only consolation. "Thank you, Brother Okuda. However, I have my own plans for this matter. You don't have to worry about it, Brother Okuda." Lin Yi smiled faintly, and then with the tip of his foot, he kicked Shijun. At the same time, he displayed the invisible and silent soul hook hand, and directly imprisoned Shijun's primordial spirit in the space of the jade pendant. Since he said that he wanted him dead, then he would definitely die, and his death would be even more miserable than before. Out of respect for my brother Okuda, I've already returned him to you. I won't hold the matter of the Stone Army's sneak attack against me for now. However, I'm warning you, if you provoke me again, no one will be able to save you." Lin Yi said coldly to Zhang Dongjue and the others, including Li Zhaoyi. This girl was weird, and she always hung out with that idiot Zhang Tianqing. Of course, he did not have a good impression of her. Zhang Dongjue snorted. Although he saved Shijun, he did not feel proud of his victory. This time he was reckless. He wanted to use Shijunto to get rid of Lin Yi, but he did not expect that Lin Yi was so strong that he could easily get rid of Shijun Tong Wulsuo, who was in the crowd, secretly shook his head. It was true that Zhang Dongjue was his master, but it was really hard to follow a master who liked to mess around. What did he do? He clearly said not to provoke Lin Yi, but in the next moment he sent someone to assassinate him. It would have been fine if it had succeeded, but it just had to fail. However, Tong Wulsuo also knew that this sudden action was most likely because Zhang Tianqing had suffered a loss in the hands of Lin Yi, so he instigated Zhang Dongjue to make a move. He probably couldn't bring himself to do it. Tong Wulsuo could only comfort himself in this manner. At the very least, he managed to figure out some of Lin Yi's strength through this operation, so it was not as if he did not gain anything at all. Just as he was thinking about this, Zhang Dongjue suddenly roared, "Lin Yi, what did you do to Shijun? Why isn't there any movement from him?" His soul had been taken away by the soul-reaping hand, so it would be strange if he could still move. Although Shijun was still alive, he was no different from a corpse. He would completely rot away after a while. Lin Yi sneered in his heart and said calmly, "What did I do? Zhang Dongjue, are you looking for trouble? If you want to find trouble, just say it. I will take it all. Don't find such a poor excuse." Zhang Dongjue was suddenly speechless. He did not have any evidence to prove that Lin Yi had done something to Shijun, but even a fool would know that something had happened to Shijun. It was definitely Lin Yi's doing. However, unless there was evidence, it would be useless to say anything else. Lin Yi looked at Shijun and sneered. Does this guy have some hidden disease? Otherwise, he wouldn't have suddenly become like this, right? Zhang Dongjue, you saw it too. I didn't do anything to him, but he suddenly became a fool. Don't blame me. Zhang Dongjue glared at Lin Yi fiercely. He knew that he could not gain any advantage in a verbal argument, so he simply ignored Lin Yi and quickly gave Shijun a detailed examination. It was a pity that there was nothing wrong with Shijun's body except for some trivial injuries. The murderous aura of the 5 elements had been eliminated by Lin Yi, so there was no abnormality in his meridians. As the chief alchemist of the pill hall, Li Zhaoyi naturally knew about medicine. Zhang Dongjue couldn't find any problems, so she went forward to check. Hey, this situation seems to be a case of soullessness. Is it because he lost his soul? Li Zhaoyi said in a low voice, slightly surprised. Then she looked up at Lin Yi, hoping to see some clues from Lin Yi's face. Unfortunately, she did not get what she wanted. Master Li Zhao, can you find a way to treat Shijun? Zhang Dongjue looked at Li Zhaoyi with hope. He couldn't see any problem with Shijun at all, but Li Zhaoyi found it all at once. Of course, he pinned all his hopes on the chief alchemist of the pill hall. Li Zhaoyi stood up and shook her head slightly. This is not something that can be cured by any elixir. I don't have a way. Maybe he will wake up in a few days. If that doesn't work, Deputy Hall Master Zheng can bid for the Spirit Gathering branch in this auction and give it to High Official Shi. It might be able to help him regain consciousness. Lin Yi had been paying attention to the situation here. Naturally, he heard Li Zhaoyi's words. He had a whole new level of respect for this strange girl. Unfortunately, she didn't know the function of the soul-hooking hand. Shijun's soul was completely imprisoned by Lin Yi, not to mention the God-gathering branch. Even a God-gathering tree would be useless. Thinking of this, Lin Yi couldn't help but shiver. If Han Jingjing's soul was also imprisoned by someone or some force, even if he obtained the God-gathering branch, would it be possible to wake Han Jingjing up? Okay, everyone, please leave. I will send more guards to guard the aisles of the distinguished guests. I will never let this kind of thing happen again. This is my guarantee. Everyone, please rest assured. Okuda Ba didn't know about Lin Yi's worries. On the surface, Shijun's attack had come to an end, so he began to evacuate the people on the deck. After a while, the sky would brighten, and the loading and unloading of the other 4 treasure ships would be almost completed. The fleet would soon be able to set sail. As long as they left the port and the ancient battleship raised the barrier, his control of the entire battleship would reach its peak. He wouldn't have to worry about any more tricks from Middle Island Pill Hall. After the people on the deck heard Okudaba's words, they began to disperse in 2s and 3s. However, before they left, the way they looked at Lin Yi was completely different. Although Lin Yi said he would kill Shijun, he didn't really kill him in the end. However, anyone with a discerning eye could see that it didn't matter whether Shijun was killed or not. Even if he was still alive, he was no different from a dead man. After Li Zhaoyi expressed her opinion, she didn't intend to speak again. Finally, she looked at Lin Yi and simply turned to leave. Chapter 58:23. However, Zheng Tianqing obviously didn't have any apologetic thoughts. He was also indifferent to Shijun's current situation. In his heart, he was still blaming Shijun, this idiot. He couldn't even kill an opponent weaker than him. He really deserved to die. Zhang Dongjue's face was gloomy as he signaled another guard of Dan Hall to carry Shijun back to his room. Originally, he wanted to send Shijun back to the shore, but after listening to Li Zhaoyi's words, he changed his mind. Since he needed the Spirit Gathering branch to treat Shijun, it was obviously more appropriate to take him to the northernmost island. After a while, Zheng Dongsheng, who was in the medicine sect, rushed over after receiving the notice and appeared in Zhang Dongjue's room. In the original plan, Zhang Dongsheng was to stay in Middle Island to deal with Tiandan Pavilion, while Zhang Dongjue took Sheng, Tianqing, and Tongwulsui to the northernmost island to see if there was a chance to cut off the wings of Tiandan Pavilion. Who would have thought that one of his wings would be broken before the ship even set sail? A Xiansheng at the great perfection was definitely a top figure in Middle Island. Dongjue, what the hell is going on? Didn't we agree not to provoke Lin Yi for the time being, but to start with the likes of Hou Guanqi, Kai Zhongyang, and Okuda Ba? Even if you want Shi Jun to kill someone, it should be Hou Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang, right? Zhang Dongsheng asked with great dissatisfaction after sitting down. In addition to Zhang Dongsheng and Zhang Dongjue, there was only Zhang Tianqing. In order to find an opportunity, Tong Wulsui would not appear around them for the time being. Even if he met them, he would pretend not to know them. Zhang Dongjue snorted and didn't speak. He couldn't tell Zhang Dongsheng that it was all his son's fault in front of Zhang Tianqing. If it weren't for his nonsense, they wouldn't have lost a powerful man. Zhang Tianqing looked at Zhang Dongjue and stood up directly, saying, "Father, I asked my uncle to avenge me. Lin, he made me lose face in front of Li Zaoi. If I don't kill him, it will make my mind confused. It is likely to become my inner demon when I practice. If I want to continue to make progress, I must not let Lin Yi go." Zhang Dongsheng was speechless. It was his son's fault. What else could he say? This matter was related to Zhang Tianqing's cultivation, so it was no wonder that Zhang Dongjue would agree to let Shi Jun deal with Lin Yi. Forget it. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's talk about Shi Jun's situation. Is there any way to wake him up? After all, he is a master at the great perfection of profound ascension. It would be a pity to lose him like this. Zhang Dongsheng waved his hand and no longer mentioned the matter of dealing with Lin Yi. Instead, he turned to Shi Jun. Zhang Dongjue shook his head and said, "Cousin, you have seen Shi Jun just now. Li Zaoi is right. It is very much like a loss of soul. I can be sure that it was Lin Yi who did it, but I can't be sure how he did it. Maybe he was poisoned before? Can you see any signs of poisoning?" Zhang Dongsheng was also helpless. If he could see it, would he have waited until now to say it? Was this a slap to his face, or what? Forget it. Let's go to the extreme North Island and by the God-gathering branch first. Cousin, you don't have to go down. Just come with us. Zhang Dongjue also realized that there was something wrong with his words, so he quickly waved his hand to stop the topic. Since no one could do anything, they could only do as Li Zaoi said. Anyway, the God-gathering branch was a good thing, and it would not be a loss to buy it and hold it in their hands. He let Zhang Dongsheng go with him because he felt that Zhang Tianqing was not very reliable. He seemed to be very talented, but this time he cheated him. It was better to let the kid's father go with him. Zhang Dongsheng did not object. He was not in a hurry to deal with Tiandan Pavilion. As long as he could cut off a few people on this ship, Tiandan Pavilion would be rootless duckweed, and there was nothing to worry about. At the same time, several people gathered in Lin Yi's room. Hou Guanqi, Kai Zhongyang, and Wei Xinjin were all there. Okuda Ba did not come because he had to arrange some affairs on the ship. Hou Guanqi said with a worried face, "Brother Lin, this time you are really a little impulsive. Zhang Dongjue, that villain, will definitely exaggerate this matter and say that you have offended the Dan Hall and did not give Master face. You may not know, but Master is a person who cares a lot about face. If he knows that you did not give him face, he will definitely be angry." Lin, he couldn't help but say, "Brother Ho, it's not good for you to say that about your master. Pil God Zhang, right?" Hou Guanqi was immediately amused, and the worry on his face lessened a lot. "I am worried for you. Can you be a little more serious?" Kai Zhongyang also laughed and said, "Eldest senior brother, you are worrying too much. Master is not a person who cares a lot about face. At the same time, he likes to be reasonable. Even if Zhang Dongjue will stir up trouble, don't tell me that we don't have mouths to speak." What is the truth? Master will naturally distinguish it. You don't have to be scared and worried here. Lin Yi thought to himself that his cheap master's character should be pretty good. There was really no need to worry too much about this matter. Of course, he was not worried in the first place. All right, Brother Ho. Brother Kai said that Pilga Zhang is a reasonable person. He definitely won't bother with me. What's more, you already know that Shi Jun is Zhang Dongjue's man. So Pilga Zhang must have some understanding. So no matter how Zhang Dongjue tries to stir up trouble, it's useless. Lin Yi said with a relaxed smile, making Ho Guanqi feel a lot more relaxed. That's right, Master is a reasonable person. When the time comes, Junior Brother Kai and I will explain it to Master. I believe that Zhang Dongjue's words won't be able to deceive Master. Ho Guanqi nodded, finally letting go of the worry in his heart. Wei Shenjin felt that he was very useless. He couldn't help at all. Lin Yi seemed to notice his thoughts, raised his hand, patted his shoulder, and said, All right, I have nothing to do here. You go back and rest early. Pay attention to your safety. We'll talk about it after we set sail tomorrow. Okay, boss. Wei Shenjin agreed. He thought that he couldn't help with anything else. He could only cultivate well. In the future, if someone wanted to cause trouble for boss, he would be the first to rush up and resist. Ho Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang also stood up and said, Since that's the case, we will also take our leave. Brother Lin, rest well. We'll talk again after we set sail. Lin Yi didn't ask them to stay. He sent them out of the door, then closed the door, and once again put up a restriction. The restriction destroyed by Shi Jun had been repaired. It was difficult to rearrange it, but the repair was still very simple. There were specialized people on the ancient warship to do this. Lin Yi inspected it. He was quite satisfied with the repair. Chapter 58:24. When Lin Yi took out the Shinnong tripod and began to refine the soul-quenching pill, Yu Hua was asking about Lin Yi. Father, what's the background of that Lin Yi? Why does he seem to be so powerful? Only Yu Hua and Shang Wani were in the room, so she spoke casually. Shang Wani smiled and said, This Lin Yi does have some strength. I heard that he is the newcomer king of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, the leading figure among the new generation of disciples of the 3 pavilions in the North Island, and he is valued by Shanghai Tianhua. In the North Island, Lin Yi's reputation is so strong that he is almost as powerful as Ramjia, the strongest of the young generation. Although he has some conflicts with the people of the North Island branch of the Universal Chamber of Commerce, it can't cover up his talent. So he is so famous in the North Island? Shang Yuhua exclaimed in admiration. However, she did not pay too much attention to it. The North Island was the weakest of the 5 major islands. For a rookie king of the North Island to receive such praise from her was already pretty good. You're wrong if you think he is only famous in the North Island. He is also the son-in-law of the little princess of the West Island, Ning Xuefei. Shang Wani chuckled and continued. You know about the marriage of the little princess of the West Island, right? The last lucky one is Lin Yi. In addition, I heard that he has also been to the South Island, and he went deep into the spirit beast area. I don't know the details, but he was able to leave the South Island safely, which shows his strength. Hiss, is he so powerful? Shang Yuhua gasped and was extremely surprised. It was not important to be the son-in-law of the West Island, but it was really amazing that he could go deep into the South Island and leave safely. That was the South Island, which was known as the Forbidden Area for human beings. More than that, last time the Zhang family targeted Lin Yi, saying that the elixirs of the Tianden Pavilion were smuggled from the East State. The acting island owner, Okuda, suppressed this matter, but the Zhang family directly wrote a letter to the East State to complain, and in the end, they were scolded by the bigwigs of the East State. From this, it can be seen that Lin Yi is also a person of high status in the East State. Speaking of this, Shang Wani couldn't help admiring Lin Yi. Speaking of this, Lin Yi had actually traveled to all 5 islands, and he had powerful forces and helpers in the West Island, the North Island, and the Middle Island. Even in the East Island, he was probably very popular. Maybe he also had some connections in the Spirit Beast clan of the South Island. Thinking about it carefully, it was really scary. The Zheng family actually wanted to go against such a guy. What on earth was it that they couldn't think it through? Shang Wani praised Lin Yi inwardly. He was already trying to remember if he'd done anything impolite to Lin Yi. Even if he couldn't work with someone like this, he should at least try his best to be on good terms with him. Who knew when he'd need Lin Yi's help? Shang Yuhua's beautiful big eyes were wide open, and she slightly opened her small mouth with a dull look on her face. After a long while, she exhaled and said, "It turns out that he is such a powerful person. No wonder he would help his younger brother to go on a blind date." Shang Yuhua knew a little about Wei Xinjin. After hearing Shang Wani's introduction of Lin Yi, she was sure that Wei Xinjin was at most Lin Yi's younger brother, a close brother, or something like that. Wei Xinjin didn't seem to be qualified. Shang Wani looked at his daughter and suddenly asked, "Yuhua, you're not young anymore. Have you ever thought about your marriage?" Shang Yuhua's pretty face blushed, and she said coquettishly, "Father, why did you mention this? Do you want your daughter to get married early?" "Ha ha ha. Men and women should get married when they're of age. That's why I brought this up." Shang Wani smiled and stroked the extremely well-trimmed beard on his chin. He looked at Shang Yuhua dotingly and said, "Of course I don't want my precious daughter to get married, but if you have a sweetheart and the old man still doesn't marry you, won't you be annoyed?" "Father, what nonsense are you talking about?" Shang Yuhua's pretty face became even redder. She snorted and said, "Your daughter doesn't have a sweetheart. An ordinary playboy can't even enter your daughter's eyes." Speaking up to here, Lin Yi's cold eyes and overbearing aura emerged in Shang Yuhua's mind, but she immediately shook her head and shook it off. Lin Yi was extremely outstanding, but because he was too outstanding, Shang Yuhua didn't have the slightest thought. Such a man was destined to not be a good match for her. Moreover, the girls around Lin Yi were better than her in terms of beauty and excellence. Shang Yuhua was a girl who knew her own limitations. Shang Wani nodded and said, "All right, since you don't have a sweetheart, then father will help you pay more attention. I'll see if there are any young heroes that are worthy of my family's Yuhua." "Humph, you still say that you don't want me to get married early. I'm ignoring you." Shang Yuhua stomped her feet and got up to leave. Shang Wani didn't stop her. It was late, and it was good to let her go back to rest. As for the idea of finding a rich husband for Shang Yuhua, he really didn't say it casually. It was just that he still needed to consider who to choose. When the sky was about to brighten, the fleet led by the Okuda Dam ancient warship completed all the preparations and began to slowly leave the port of Nakajima. They lined up in the direction of the northernmost island and gradually accelerated their departure. Lin Yi had already completed the refining of a furnace of quenching spirit pellet in his room. He was preparing for the second refining. The slight vibration of the hull let him know that they had set off, but it didn't affect him at all. He continued to do what he should do. After the incident with Shurjun, it was estimated that no one would dare to forcibly enter his room again. To some extent, Shurjun's arrival was also timely. Otherwise, without this warning, Lin Yi would suffer a great loss if he was disturbed when he was refining the pellet. The first day passed peacefully. When night fell, Lin Yi finished refining the pellet and prepared to take a rest. No matter how powerful his divine sense was, he couldn't keep refining pellets endlessly. After all, on this ancient warship, not everyone was a friend. There were also many enemies. Lin Yi must have enough strength to deal with unexpected situations. "Boss, you came out." As soon as Lin Yi opened the door of the room, Wei Xinjin appeared in front of him, full of spirit. "Could it be that this kid has been waiting at the door all along? What are you waiting here for?" Lin Yi asked curiously. If there was something, he should have touched the restriction at the door to let him know, right? Chapter 58:25. I see, it's quite a coincidence. Lin Yi nodded indifferently and looked at Ho Guanqi and Kai Zhongyang's rooms. Both of them seemed to be in seclusion in their rooms, so he would not disturb them for the time being. Boss, do you want to go eat something together? Wei Shinjin suggested with a smile. Although he failed to get to know Shang Yuhua last time, failure was the mother of success. Maybe success would be born today. Okay, then let's go. Lin Yi just needed to take a break, so it was good to go eat something. By the way, he could see if Shang Yuhua was there. If she was, he would continue to matchmake her and Wei Shinjin. This time there were fewer people in the small VIP restaurant, and only about 40% of the seats were occupied. Lin Yi scanned with his divine sense and found that the main target, Shang Yuhua, was still with Shang Wani. Maybe this was a place to talk about new business, so Shang Wani would prefer to stay here. In this way, it would be much more convenient for Wei Shanjin to see Shang Yuhua in the future. He only needed to come here often. In addition to Shang Yuhua, Lin Yi also accidentally saw the strange girl Li Zaoi. He thought that she would start to refine elixirs in seclusion after tasting the food yesterday. He did not expect that she would come to eat again. Ho Guanqi's information was not accurate. Of course, where there was Li Zaoi, there must be Zheng Tianqing. After being solemnly warned not to provoke Lin Yi again yesterday, this guy simply pretended not to see Lin Yi today and did not even raise his head. Seeing Lin Yi come in, the people in the restaurant took a deep look at him. What happened on the deck yesterday really impressed them. Several people took the initiative to say hello to Lin Yi, and Lin Yi also responded with a smile. Lin Yi took Wei Shinjin directly to the table of Shang Wani and his daughter, and said very politely, "Vice President Shang, Miss Shang, what a coincidence to meet you again. Can we sit together today?" Shang Wani smiled warmly and said, "Of course, Master Lin. Young hero Wei, please sit down. We didn't have a good chat yesterday, and I was thinking when I could visit Master Lin. It's so nice to meet you." "Really? What a coincidence. I also felt that I didn't have a good chat with Vice President Shang. So when I saw you here, I took the liberty to come over," Lin Yi said with a smile. Of course, everyone knew that this was complete nonsense. The only purpose of him and Wei Shinjin coming over was to let Wei Shinjin and Shang Yuhua have a chance to talk. Shang Wani and his daughter were also well aware of this, but no one pointed it out. As the vice president of the Universal Chamber of Commerce, Shang Wani's ability to communicate with people was certainly unquestionable. Since he had the intention of befriending Lin Yi, he obviously began to talk about the topics that Lin Yi was interested in. He could talk about anything under the sun, and the atmosphere quickly became harmonious. However, Wei Shinjin and Shang Yuhua still didn't have anything to say. Lin Yi really wanted to beat this fool. When he didn't see her, he wanted to find Shang Yuhua. But when he saw her, he didn't say a word and pretended to be mute. Isn't this a waste of time? By the way, Master Lin, I want to ask you a favor. Shang Wani saw Lin Yi chatting happily, so he conveniently made a request that he had been thinking about for a long time. Vice President Shang, you don't have to be so polite. Just say it. Lin Yi said politely. He had no choice but to be polite. His little brother was planning to marry Wei Shinjin's daughter. If he succeeded, Shang Wani would become an elder. Here's the thing. I want Master Lin to give us, the Universal Chamber of Commerce, the authorization. After we buy the elixirs of Yellow Level 6, and above from Tiandan Pavilion, we can resell them outside of Middle Island after we buy them from Tiandan Pavilion. Of course, we will share the profits with Tiandan Pavilion according to the rules, Shang Wani said carefully while constantly observing Lin Yi's expression. The proposal this time seemed to be no different from the last time, but in fact, there was a huge difference. The previous cooperation was equivalent to the exclusive agency of the Universal Chamber of Commerce for the sale of Tiandan Pavilion's elixirs outside of Middle Island. This time it was only to buy the elixirs at the original price from Tiandan Pavilion and then get the authorization to resell them. If there were other chambers of commerce that wanted to do the same, Tiandan Pavilion could continue to authorize others. According to Shang Wani's estimation, this proposal was still very likely to get Lin Yi's approval. Especially under such circumstances, Lin Yi probably also wanted to be on good terms with him. Sure enough, after thinking for a while, Lin Yi nodded and said no problem. If it's just the authorization to resell Tiandan Pavilion's elixirs outside of Middle Island, I think it's okay. When we return to Middle Island, Vice President Shang can go to Tiandan Pavilion and have a good discussion. Ha ha ha, that's great. Thank you, Master Lin. Come, let's have a toast. I hope we will have more and more cooperation in the future. Shang Wani laughed and raised his glass to toast Lin Yi. Lin Yi didn't decline and raised his glass in return. The two drank at the same time and suddenly felt a little closer to each other. After getting Lin Yi's approval, Shang Wani was in a good mood. Don't look down on the authorization to resell these elixirs outside of Middle Island. For example, a yellow level 7 Thunder Xian pill was basically priceless. If it was sold in Tiandan Pavilion for 70 to 80,000 spiritual jades, it was easy to sell it for 2 to 300,000 spiritual jades in auctions like North Island. The profit from this was really not low. With this good start, Shang Wani naturally valued Lin Yi more. The two talked and laughed, and for a moment they were very close, like old friends reuniting. It was a pity that Shang Yuhua didn't have any special feelings for Wei Shenjin. A person who could be accepted as a follower by someone like Lin Yi shouldn't be too bad. It was a pity that she didn't have a good impression of Wei Shenjin from the beginning. After these two interactions, Wei Shenjin didn't show any frivolous behavior. Instead, he seemed very young and inexperienced. Shang Yuhua also learned about some of his previous failed marriages, but at most, she felt a little sympathy for Wei Shenjin. It wasn't to say that she was moved. While talking with Shang Wani, Lin Yi secretly paid attention to the change in Shang Yuhua's attitude toward Wei Shenjin. Although she didn't like him, at least she didn't hate him like yesterday, which was a big improvement. In any case, Shang Yuhua and Wei Shenjin were now acquainted. Whether they could have new developments in the future, Lin Yi couldn't care less. It was up to Wei Shenjin to pursue it himself, and others couldn't help much. At the other table, Li Zhaoyi let Zheng Tianqing flatter her, but she didn't respond at all. She ate her food slowly and elegantly, then got up and left. Not yet to be continued. Chapter 58-26. The smile on Zheng Tianqing's face froze a little, and a trace of embarrassment and annoyance flashed across his face. However, he immediately stood up and wanted to catch up with Li Zhaoyi. However, when he saw Li Zhaoyi walking straight to Lin Yi, he was at a loss. His old man and second uncle had repeatedly warned him not to provoke Lin Yi, but Li Zhaoyi had been there. Should he follow her or not? Before he could figure out the answer to this question, Zheng Tianqing's body had already made a choice. He took a few quick steps and caught up with Li Zhaoyi. Master Li Zhao, what are you doing here? Lin Yi is an enemy of our Dan Hall, and he is cruel and merciless. Be careful that he doesn't kill you. Zheng Tianqing leaned over to Li Zhaoyi and whispered to her. Unfortunately, Li Zhaoyi didn't want to pay attention to him at all. She moved a little to the side expressionlessly, meaning that she didn't like Zheng Tianqing getting too close. Zheng Tianqing was a little embarrassed, but he was used to this degree of disregard. It was not a big deal. Li Zhaoyi came to stand beside Lin Yi and said coldly, Lin Yi, I have some questions to ask you. Come with me. Lin Yi looked up at her and said lightly, I don't have time. Please go ahead. Zheng Tianqing thought that this was a rare opportunity. He immediately stood up and scolded angrily, Lin Yi, don't be so shameless. You haven't even settled the debt of offending our Dan Hall. Now Master Li Zhao wants to ask you some questions, and you dare to make things difficult for him? What are you? Does the Dan Hall belong to you? Lin Yi's face was full of sarcasm, and then he said coldly, Don't bother me, or you will know the consequences. Zheng Tianqing was shocked. Only then did he remember that Lin Yi's fierceness was not something he could contend with. Even Shi Jun, who was at the peak of profound ascension, was defeated. How could he, a guy at the early Yuanying stage, challenge Lin Yi? Sure enough, the strategy of not provoking Lin Yi for the time being was correct. He should be obedient. Li Zhaoyi didn't pay attention to what Zhang Tianqing and Lin Yi were saying at all. She thought for a moment before continuing, "Since you don't have time, I'll ask here. What caused Shi Jun's condition? What kind of pill could save him? Or do you have such a pill formula? I can use other pill formulas to exchange with you." Lin Yi waved his hand to interrupt Li Zhaoyi. This chick either didn't speak, or she talked non-stop. Didn't she know that she and Lin Yi were enemies? Of course. Lin Yi did not regard her as an enemy. He just felt that this chick was a little strange. "I said I'm not free, so I won't answer any of your questions. Also, Shi Jun has nothing to do with me anymore. Don't mention anything about him to me in the future," Lin Yi said unceremoniously. He didn't have any ill feelings towards Li Zhaoyi, but he also didn't have any good feelings towards her, so he didn't want to have any interaction with her. Li Zhaoyi wasn't angry. She just nodded and said, "Well, since you're not free, forget it. I heard that you're also a mystic first-level alchemist. If there's anything you don't understand in alchemy, you can ask me. I might find time to give you some pointers." After that, without waiting for Lin Yi to answer, she turned and left calmly, leaving Lin Yi looking at her back, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This chick was really conceited. She knew that he was a mystic first-level alchemist, but she still dared to say that she would give him pointers. What level was her alchemy skills at? How old was she? Was there really such a genius alchemist? However, Lin Yi didn't care. His alchemy method was different from everyone else's. As long as Han Jingjing was there, he could constantly upgrade the automatic alchemy system. Alchemy was not difficult at all. After this little episode, Shang Wani didn't continue to chat with Lin Yi. Soon, he left with Shang Yuhua. Although Wei Xinjin was a little reluctant, he was already very satisfied with the current situation. Today, Shang Yuhua chatted with him in a very normal tone. It was really just 2 sentences. One of them was a greeting before leaving, but it was obviously many times better than yesterday's cynicism. For this point, Lin Yi said that he had nothing to say. If Wei Xinjin liked to giggle, then let him giggle. He hoped that Shang Yuhua would like his giggle one day. After sending Wei Xinjin back to his room, Lin Yi went to the deck alone. After a day of sailing, Middle Island had long disappeared without a trace. In his sight, except for the other 4 treasure ships, there was only the beautiful scenery of the sea and the sky under the faint night sky. Lin Yi's divine sense spread out, wanting to see if Lenguza was cruising nearby. However, he couldn't find any trace of Lenguza within the range of his divine sense. It seemed that this guy was having too much fun after entering the sea. Previously, Lin Yi was still worried that Lenguza's strength wasn't strong enough. But after thinking about it, the strength of his consciousness should be considered to be far stronger than the sea beasts on Skystage Island. Adding on the sea dragon's racial advantage, normal sea beasts of the mountain opening period probably wouldn't be his opponent. As long as he didn't go to the deep sea to look for those strong existences, he probably wouldn't be in any danger. Moreover, the ancient warship and the treasure ship were huge targets. He shouldn't have lost them. Brother Lin, did you come here to look at the scenery? Why didn't you come and have a drink with me? Okuda-ba walked over from the bridge and greeted him with a smile from afar. Lin Yi withdrew his divine sense from the sea, turned around and said with a smile, "Brother Okuda, I was afraid of disturbing you, so I came here to enjoy the wind. Forget about drinking, I just ate." Okuda-ba walked over and pointed at Lin Yi. "Brat, why are you being so polite with me? Did you forget that you are still the honorary vice captain of this ancient battleship? You can do whatever you want on this ship." After saying that, Okuda-ba felt a bit regretful. He had actually forgotten that Lin Yi had this identity. That Shi Jun dared to sneak attack the honorary vice captain on the ship. so it wouldn't be too much to deal with him. If Zhang Dongjue brought up the Maritime Shipping Association again, Okuda-ba wouldn't be worried. The honorary vice captain position had been reported. With this identity, the Maritime Shipping Association absolutely wouldn't be biased towards the pill hull. Brother Okuda, don't tell me that you want me to do something. So you specifically reminded me that I am your honorary vice captain? Lin Yi said with a laugh. He was just talking nonsense, but he didn't expect Okuda-ba to really agree. That's right. I didn't have this idea at first, but Brother Lin, you reminded me. Okuda-ba smiled like an old fox that had stolen a chicken. There is something that I really need your help with. Of course, if you don't have the time, you don't have to force yourself. Chapter 58:27. Okuda-ba was overjoyed. Of course you can help. Actually, this matter doesn't have to be done right now. I'm just telling you in advance. You've already heard about the Maritime Association. Anyone who makes a living in the seas, as long as they aren't pirates, will be under the jurisdiction of the Maritime Association. Every once in a while, the Maritime Association will have a competition for the distribution of the sea routes. This year's competition will start shortly after the auction. Lin Yi suddenly said, I understand Brother Okuda wants me to help you participate in the competition for the distribution of the sea routes? Let me say this first, I don't know much about this, so don't blame me if I can't help you. Brother Lin is too modest. You're the most talented maritime expert I've ever seen. If you can't help me, then no one can help me. Okuda-ba laughed and said, Lin Yi's first performance was still fresh in his memory. Not to mention the matter of the lookout, controlling the starfall array to repel the sea dragon, was amazing. Just thinking about it made him excited for a long time. Only Lin Yi knew that it wasn't him who did it. If it wasn't for the ghost's help, he wouldn't have known about the starfall array. Thinking about the ghost, Lin Yi realized that he hadn't paid attention to whether the ghost had woken up or not after returning to the heavenly island. He hurriedly contacted in his mind, Senior Azure Dragon, are you awake? What do you think? You stinking brat, are you hoping that I won't wake up? The ghost said lazily, but the strong resentment in its words made Lin Yi blush with shame. It seemed like Jiao Yazi had used a similar tone last time, right? Old people need people to take the initiative to care for them. Brother Okuda, let's talk about this matter first. When the competition for the sea route starts, I'll go with you. I won't be accompanying you for now. I just thought of an alchemy problem. I need to go back and test it. Lin Yi didn't have time to talk to Okuda-ba. He hurriedly said goodbye and ran back to his room. Lin Yi hadn't expected it before. But now that the ghost had woken up, of course, he had to have a good chat with it. After all, it was his mentor and helpful friend who could provide him with many useful suggestions. Okuda smiled and waved at Lin Yi. He didn't mind Lin Yi being in a hurry. After all, he had already gotten the results he wanted. Other details weren't important. After Lin Yi returned to his room and sat down, he said solemnly, Senior Azure Dragon, I haven't been able to contact you for a long time after I went to the secular world. I didn't think of you after I came back. I'm really sorry. It doesn't matter. You don't need me now anyway. The ghostly thing snorted. Obviously, it didn't really matter. Lin Yi secretly laughed. Sure enough, this ghost was similar to Jiao Yazi. Unfortunately, Jiao Yazi couldn't appear on Heaven Stage Island. Otherwise, the two of them could be companions and chat when they had nothing to do. How is that possible? I went to the secular world because I didn't have Senior with me. That's why it was so difficult. If you were always by my side, I would be much more relaxed. Lin Yi's words weren't nonsense. Although it was a bit exaggerated to say that it was difficult, with the ghost around, it would indeed be more relaxing. The ghostly thing cackled and finally said in a satisfied tone, You finally said something that makes sense. But I also know that you're trying to make me happy because you want me to help Okuda snatch the route, right? How could that be? I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. Senior, you still don't know me. Lin Yi grinned. He thought to himself, I'll speak the truth when I see the person speaking the truth, when I see the ghost speaking the truth, when it sees the person speaking the truth. All right, let's not talk about these useless things. Kid, you've stirred up quite a bit of trouble in the secular world. You even brought back a sea serpent. That little guy's fleshly body is really not bad. If it weren't for your little brother, I would have taken over his body. The ghostly thing sighed, looking very regretful. Lin, he suddenly broke into a sweat. Although he knew that the ghost was joking, he couldn't help but break into a cold sweat for Lenguza. If the ghost really wanted to possess him, Lenguza really wouldn't be able to resist in the space of the jade pendant. The ghost was an absolute powerhouse in the aspect of spirit. The strength of Lenguza's divine sense wasn't even on par with the strength of his body. How could he be a match for the ghost? Senior, Lenguza is only a sea dragon. Even if you take over his body, you won't be able to display your might. Even if you want to take over someone's body, I think it should at least be that sea dragon from last time. Lin Yi thought of the power of the sea dragon he saw last time. He really felt that if the ghost could possess such a body, its strength could at least recover 70% to 80%. The ghost laughed and said, "All right, you go catch him and let me possess him. I'll leave this task to you. Forget it. The body that is possessed is ultimately not as good as our own. We have to pursue perfection." Lin Yi decisively changed the topic, not to mention that he was only at the peak of the mysterious ascension late stage. Even if he was at the peak of the mountain opening late stage, he probably wouldn't be able to withstand a single swipe from the sea dragon. It was better to think of other ways. It just so happens that when I went to the secular world this time, I found a place called the ancient Small Jianghu. It is said that there is a heavenly material and earthly treasure called the purple mist lotus that can perfectly reshape the body. Unfortunately, I didn't find the exact place. I'll go look carefully next time. If you didn't find it, why are you talking to me? The ghost said very discontentedly. The purple mist lotus was a good thing, but if you didn't get it, it was still a fake. Senior, this time there is a piece of soul cultivation wood being auctioned in the extreme North Island. I'm going to buy it for you to nourish your soul. This thing is useful to you, right? Lin Yi patted his forehead and once again used the great method of changing the topic. In fact, when he heard about the soul cultivation wood, the first thing he thought of was the ghost, but he didn't contact him. He was really a little dumbfounded. Of course it's useful. At least you still have conscience. I also know that you lost your soul because of that little girl Han Jingjing, so I'm a magnanimous adult and won't argue with you. The ghost said it generously, but Lin Yi thought about its tone at the beginning. It didn't sound like a magnanimous adult. However, listening to its words, Lin Yi knew that it already knew that he wanted to buy the soul cultivation wood. This ghost was really cunning. It obviously woke up, but it didn't take the initiative to talk to him. It had the same character as Zhao Yazi.